The air is warm, not the dry warmth of summer afternoons, or the artificial warmth of a heated room, but the deep, saturated warmth of a world that has never known winter. You feel it on your skin before you open your eyes, a thick, living heat that carries within it the smell of wet fern and river clay, and something sweet and ancient, like flowers that have not yet been named. You are lying on soft ground. Beneath you, the earth is yielding, a thick mat of moss and fallen fronds that press back against your weight with gentle, cushioned resistance. The surface is not cold, not hard, not demanding anything from you. It simply holds you, the way the earth always has, the way it always will. Around you, the world breathes. You can hear it. A low, layered sound, the hiss of wind through canopy that rises 50 meters above your head. The soft percussion of water falling somewhere nearby. The distant call of something enormous and unhurried moving through the trees to the east. The sound does not alarm you. It is simply the voice of a living world going about its ancient business. Open your eyes slowly. There is no rush. The light here is green and gold, filtered through a ceiling of leaves so dense and various that only the thinnest threads of direct sunlight make it through. They fall in moving columns, shifting as the canopy sways, illuminating motes of dust and spore, and pollen drifting in the still air like the slowest snow you have ever seen. You are in the Jurassic, not the Jurassic of imagination or cinema, not a world of chaos and screaming and running, the real Jurassic immense, quiet, unhurried, and more beautiful than anything that came after it. A world 150 million years before the present moment, before the ice ages, before the first flower, before the first song, a world complete and sufficient in itself. You have nowhere to be. There is nothing required of you here. Let your breathing slow. Let your body release downward into the moss beneath you. The evening is coming on, soft and gradual, and the light is beginning, its long, gentle change from gold to amber, to the first pale suggestion of dusk. The forest knows this transition. It has performed it without interruption for millions of years. You may simply watch it happen. Welcome. If you are listening to this now, it is because some part of you already knows what you need. You need stillness. You need darkness behind your eyes, and the slow unwinding of a day that asks too much of you. You need a world that does not require anything back. The Jurassic has been waiting for you. It has been waiting for everything, with a patience that makes human lifetimes feel like the brief flutter of a moth near a lantern. Tonight, you are going to travel. Not far, not urgently, but deeply. You are going to descend through layers of time the way you descend into sleep gradually, willingly, releasing one era at a time until you rest in a world that existed long before worry was invented. The Jurassic period lasted for over 56 million years. Tonight, we are going to spend a small portion of that time together, moving through its landscapes with no greater purpose than to be present within them. If you enjoy listening to sleepy prehistoric dinosaur stories like this, subscribe to your toe stories like this weekly. The Jurassic world occupies a span of time between approximately 201 million and 145 million years ago. It followed a period of great dying, the Triassic-Jurassic extinction event, in which a significant portion of all life on Earth vanished, leaving behind a world of emptied niches and available space. Into that space, the dinosaurs expanded, not with aggression or violence, but with the patient biological logic of animals filling a world that suddenly had room for them. By the middle of the Jurassic, they had become the dominant vertebrates on land, not because they destroyed everything else, but because they were extraordinarily well suited to the world that had emerged. The world they inhabited was unlike anything that exists today. The continents were still largely joined into the great supercontinent Pangaea, though by the Jurassic they had begun their slow separation, Laurasia drifting north, Gondwana tilting south, the Tethys Sea opening between them like a slow, warm exhalation. The climate was warmer than our own, significantly so. There were no ice caps at the poles. The sea levels were higher. The interior regions of the great landmasses were warm and seasonally wet, supporting forests of cycad and conifer and tree fern that stretched from horizon to horizon without interruption. This is the world you have entered. Let it receive you. You do not need to understand it completely. You only need to be inside it, the way you are inside a dream, aware enough to follow the imagery, relaxed enough not to question it. The trees above you are not trees you have seen before. Their fronds are wider, their bark smoother, their root systems spread across the ground around you like the fingers of a sleeping hand. The air tastes faintly of something you cannot name, resinous and green, and older than grass itself. You are comfortable where you are. There is no danger here tonight, only depth. Only the long, slow passage of a world that knows nothing of hurry. You may let your breathing match the rhythm of this place, each breath slightly slower than the last, each exhale carrying away a little more of whatever you arrived carrying. Tonight the Jurassic receives you as it received every creature that ever slept within it, without judgment, without ceremony, with nothing more than the simple offering of its ancient, waiting darkness. Let us begin. Let us move gently through this world together, one landscape at a time, one creature at a time, one slow and breathing hour after another, until the distance between waking and sleeping is nothing more than the length of a single quiet breath. The light is changing. You can feel it before you see it. A subtle shift in the quality of warmth on your skin, the gold becoming something softer and more horizontal, the shadows under the tree ferns lengthening until they pool together into the first gathering darkness of evening. This is the hour the Jurassic forest exhales. All day it has been processing light, drawing it down through leaf and stem and root into the deep chemistry of growth. Now it rests. Now it breathes out. You are in what will one day be called the Morrison Formation, a vast stretch of landscape across the western portion of what will eventually become North America, though that name and that geography are still 150 million years in the future. Here and now there is only the land itself, a broad, flat basin threaded through with rivers, bounded to the west by the first rising folds of young mountains, open to the east and south in a sweep of forest and floodplain, so wide that its far edge is invisible in the atmospheric haze. It is late in the dry season. The rivers are lower than they will be when the rains return. The mud along their banks has cracked into polygons, each one curled slightly at its edges, and where the cracks intersect, tiny ferns have taken root, pushing up through the dry ground with the quiet insistence of living things. You are sitting against the buttress root of an Araucarian conifer, a tree, something like the ones that still grow in the southern hemisphere in your own time, though this one is older and larger than any of its descendants will be permitted to grow, its trunk a full 3 meters across at the base, its bark rough and plated like old armor, its upper canopy invisible from where you sit. The root buttress curves around you like a cupped hand, forming a shallow alcove of dry earth and shed bark that is windless and warm and perfectly sized for a body at rest. You have been here long enough that the small things around you have forgotten to be alarmed by your presence. A beetle the size of your thumb is navigating the bark 2 feet from your face, its carapace catching the last slanted light and throwing it back in flickers of deep bronze. It moves without urgency, probing each crevice with its antennae, doing the beetle's work of a Jurassic evening, the same work beetles will still be doing in your own era, patient and methodical and utterly indifferent to the passage of time. Watch it for a moment. Follow the slow, deliberate path of it across the bark. There is something deeply restful about the attention of a creature that knows only the immediate surface beneath its feet. Beyond the root buttress, the forest floor extends in every direction, softened by the gathering dusk. The cycad understory shorter plants, their leaves arranged in stiff, spreading crowns at head height, catches the last light and holds it in a warm glow that seems to come from within the leaves themselves rather than from above them. On the ground between the cycads, the surface is a deep carpet of shed fronds in various stages of decomposition, dry and rustling where they are recent, dark and silent where they have lain long enough to begin their return to soil. The smell down here is of that slow return, a rich composting warmth that is the smell of the earth doing what it has always done with the dead, receiving them back without grief. Something moves at the edge of your vision. It is small, perhaps the size of a large cat, moving low to the ground and pausing frequently to investigate the base of a cycad trunk. You watch it without turning your head. It is a small dinosaur, something in the family that will eventually produce the creatures your world calls Coelophysis. Though this animal is not quite that it belongs to a lineage that branched earlier, built on the same general plan of a bipedal, slender, fast-moving predator but slightly more compact, its neck proportionally shorter, its tail longer, and counterbalancing each careful step. Its scales are finely textured and catch the dusk light in a pattern of dark green and pale grey that makes it look, at this distance, like a piece of moving shadow. It has not noticed you, or if it has decided you are too large to be interesting as prey and too still to be threatening. It stops at the base of the cycad and pushes its snout into the leaf litter, investigating something invisible to you, a scent, or the small vibration of something buried there. Its eye is bright and expressionless, a perfect amber disk that reflects a tiny image of the whole darkening forest. It blinks once, slowly. Then it moves on, and the forest swallows it without ceremony. The sounds of the forest are layering now as evening comes on. By day this forest was relatively quiet, most of its vocal activity concentrated in the morning hours, subsiding through the long hot afternoon into a heat-hushed murmur. But evening reactivates something. Insects you have not heard all day begin their twilight frequencies, a rising, layered chord that is not quite a hum and not quite a song, but something between the two, produced by thousands of individual small bodies in the canopy above you, each one contributing its fraction to the whole. The sound rises and falls in long, slow waves that seem to follow no obvious pattern, but that feel, from where you are sitting, deeply rhythmic, like breathing, like your own breathing, which has been slowing without your noticing, matching itself to the rhythm of this place. The first star appears in the narrow strip of sky, visible through the canopy overhead. It is very bright here. The air carries none of the particulates of an industrial world, none of the scattered light of a city. The darkness, when it comes, will be complete and saturated, the kind of darkness that feels solid, that has weight, but that is still some time away. For now, there is this long, slow, amber twilight, the Jurassic's evening hour, and you are inside it. Your back against the warm, rough bark of a tree that has been growing for 300 years and will continue for 300 more. Let your eyes soften. Let the shapes of the forest become less distinct, the outlines of leaf and frond blurring slightly into the general darkness that is gathering on all sides. This is the direction your body wants to move in toward softness, toward blur, toward the pleasant indistinction of the world just before sleep. You do not need to resist it. The forest will still be here. The beetle is still there on the bark, though you can no longer see it. The small dinosaur is somewhere in the understory, methodical and unhurried. The cycads hold their crowns of leaves up toward a sky that is turning from amber to rose to the first deepening of true blue. You have been here before. Not in this body, not in this lifetime, but in the deeper biological memory that all life on Earth carries, the memory of sleeping outdoors, of lying on warm ground, of hearing the night song of insects rise around you as the light fails. This is not an alien world. It is an ancestral one. You come from here, distantly, impossibly, in the way that everything alive comes from somewhere before itself. Let that knowledge settle into your body. Let it be a kind of homecoming. The dusk deepens. The air cools by just a degree or two, not cold, never cold in this world, but enough that the warmth of your body becomes noticeable against the slight freshening of the evening breeze. The leaves of the cycads tick and whisper against each other in that breeze. Somewhere to the north, quite far away, over the sound of the insects and the water, something calls. A long, low note, more felt than heard, that travels through the ground as much as through the air. It rises and holds and then fades, leaving behind it a quality of silence that is thicker for having been interrupted. You do not need to know what made that sound. It is enough to know that it was made, that the world is full tonight of living things going about their old, unhurried business, that you are among them, that the darkness is coming on slowly and evenly and with all the gentleness in the world. Your eyes are heavy. The warmth of the bark against your back is steady and real and safe. The smell of the composting forest floor is in your lungs with every slow breath, green and rich, and carrying within it the knowledge of every year this forest has stood. Let your head drop a little. Let the muscles of your neck find their rest. The forest will watch over you while you drift it, has watched over sleeping things for longer than anything you could imagine, and it is good at the work. The evening is complete around you. The stars are multiplying in the strip of sky above. The insect chorus rises and falls and rises again, patient and unceasing. You are held here, in the warm hands of the oldest world you can reach. Let yourself go a little further into it. You have moved, without quite deciding to, toward the sound of water. It has been guiding you through the forest for some time, the soft, irregular percussion of a river moving over a shallow bed of gravel and stone. And now the trees thin ahead of you and the ground changes underfoot, becoming sandier and looser, the deep forest mat giving way to a more open floodplain where the river has deposited its cargo of fine silt over many years of wet season flooding. The sky is wider here. You can see more stars. The river is not large. It is perhaps 20 meters across at this point, running in a wide, lazy bend around a gravel bar that projects from the far bank into the current. The water is dark in the starlight, reflecting the sky in a broken, shifting mirror that reforms itself with every small disturbance, a fish rising, a piece of drifting bark, the occasional barely visible ring of something's entry from a bank above. The sound of it is layered and complex up close. Under the general white noise of water over stones, there are individual sounds. The deeper note of the main channel, the higher, faster sound of water rushing through a narrow gap between two stones near the inner bend, the irregular dripping from an overhang of root and clay on the opposite bank. You sit down on the gravel bar. The stones are smooth and rounded, worn by the river over a period of time that was already long when you arrived. They are still warm from the day's sun, that stored warmth releasing slowly into the night air, and when you lie back on them, finding the contours, shifting slightly until your spine is comfortable, the warmth comes up through your clothing and into your body with quiet generosity. The gravel molds itself around your weight. It is surprisingly comfortable, the way a beach is comfortable, the surface yielding just enough without disappearing beneath you. Above you, the stars are extraordinary. You have seen stars before, in dark places and on clear nights, but not like this. This sky has never been lit by a city. It has never been crossed by the exhaust trail of an aircraft. It has never been reduced by light pollution to a handful of bright points in a washed-out grey. The stars here are dense and various, filling the entire dome of the sky from horizon to horizon, and the Milky Way, the galactic plane, is so bright and clearly defined that it looks, lying back and looking up, like a river overhead, like a deliberate echo of the one at your side. Notice how your body responds to the sky. There is something that happens when you lie on your back and look up at stars, a physical response, deeper than thought, older than language, some ancient part of the nervous system recognizing this position and this view, and releasing something into the body that feels like permission. Permission to be small, permission to be quiet, permission to release the day's particular anxieties into a context large enough to absorb them without effort. The Jurassic sky is the same sky that has always been above the Earth. The stars have moved in relation to each other over 150 million years, drifting on their own slow currents, but they are the same stars. This light you are receiving has been travelling for hundreds and thousands of years to reach this exact point. Let it arrive. The river is moving things past you, drifting past in the dark, visible only as darker shapes on the dark water, are fragments of what the river has collected upstream, a branch of something, already stripped of its smaller elements by the current, tumbling very slowly in the eddy near the bank. A thick, waxy leaf from a cycad or a tree fern riding the surface with its glossy side up, intact still, its veins catching the starlight. A mass of something fibrous and dark that could be anything, that the river is processing on its way to whatever it eventually becomes downstream. The river accepts everything offered to it. It does not distinguish between what is precious and what is ordinary. It receives everything with the same patient, moving embrace and carries it forward. What would it feel like to be carried like that? To release your weight to a current and let it move you at its own pace, in its own direction, without effort or resistance. Your body on this gravel bar is not moving, but something else might be moving inside it, some tightly held thing, releasing its grip by degrees, following the logic of the river even if your body stays still. Let whatever is moving, move. The river knows where it is going. It has been going there for long enough to have carved this bed from solid rock. A sound from the far bank interrupts your watching of the stars. It is a gentle sound, not alarming, not close the sound of something large and unhurried entering the water from the opposite shore. You can see it only as a dark shape, something large, neck lowered to drink. Even in the near darkness you can sense its scale, the breadth of shoulder, the length of neck, the particular patience of an animal that has walked a long way to reach water and is now taking the time it needs. It is one of the sauropods among the largest animals that have ever walked on land, and among the most peaceful. This one drinks with slow, rhythmic lifts of its neck, raising water in its long throat and lowering again, and the sound it makes doing so a soft, liquid resonance carries easily across the narrow river to where you lie. Can you feel the ground vibrate? Very faintly, not through the air, but through the gravel beneath you, a subtle tremor with each step the animal takes on the opposite bank, transmitted through the earth and received by your back and the back of your skull, a subaudible communication from one of the largest beings your world has ever produced. This is what the ground felt like for millions of years, the constant, gentle percussion of vast animals moving through it, the earth registering the passage of its largest children, the way skin registers a hand laid softly upon it. The sauropod finishes drinking. It raises its head, you can just make out the shape of it against the slightly lighter darkness of the sky, and holds it there for a moment, perhaps watching you with its ancient, unhurried intelligence, perhaps not watching you at all, perhaps simply pausing in the way that large animals pause, with no particular reason required. Then it turns, slowly, its weight shifting with a deliberateness that sends another faint tremor through the ground, and it moves back into the trees. The forest receives it without comment. The river runs on. How does it feel to have been seen, or almost seen, by something that large? Not threatened, not diminished, but simply included in the same moment, the same dark riverbank, the same circle of stars. There is a particular kind of rest in being small and witnessed, in being one small, warm creature among many on a night that belongs to all of them equally. Your heartbeat is slow and steady. The gravel holds your warmth. The river runs its patient course past you, carrying its cargo of bark and leaf and dissolved stone towards somewhere further and lower than here. The insect chorus from the forest behind you has not stopped. It is behind you now rather than all around, a wall of sound at your back that the open air of the floodplain absorbs and softens. Above you, the stars continue their barely perceptible drift, so slow that in the span of one night you will not see it, cannot see it, will feel it only as the gradual rotation of a bright point from one position to another over many hours. The earth is turning. It has always turned. It will be turning when you wake. For now, your part in that turning is simply to lie on this warm gravel and let it happen around you. Close your eyes for a moment. Keep the sound of the river with you. It has not changed, will not change, is the same sound that has been here through every night of this river's life. Let it become the background against which everything else resolves into silence. The stars are still above you, even with your eyes closed. The warmth of the gravel is still beneath you. The sauropod is somewhere in the dark trees, moving or resting, its breathing slow and enormous. The small dinosaur from the forest is somewhere too, doing what it does at night. Everything is where it belongs. The current of the river catches your attention again. It is never quite the same sound twice. There are patterns within it that repeat, but never identically, like music that you understand is improvised, that you follow without knowing what comes next, that you trust will continue in its own logic for as long as you need it to. This is the river's gift to things that rest beside it. Not silence, but sound, that is so continuous and so varied that the brain stops trying to parse it for meaning and simply receives it as sensation. Let your brain stop parsing. Let the river be just the river. If you are drifting now, let yourself go. Subscribe so the next story is waiting when you return. Sleep well. It is morning. The kind of morning that arrives without announcement, the darkness simply thinning by degrees until the shapes of things emerge from it first as silhouettes against a slightly lighter sky, then as outlines with suggestion of colour, then as the full, detailed, present tense reality of a new day in the Jurassic. You have been awake for some time already, lying on the gravel bar where you spent the night, watching this process without hurry. The stars have gone. The river is the same colour as pewter in the pre-dawn light. The birds, or rather the bird-lined dinosaurs that occupy the bird's ecological niche in this era, have begun in the canopy behind you, tentative at first, then more assured. And what stirs you finally from your comfortable position on the warm gravel is sound. Not an alarming sound, not the near sound of something dangerous, but something felt more than heard. A low and rhythmic vibration in the earth beneath you, like the world's own pulse made slightly more urgent. You sit up slowly. The light is coming now, the sky to the east shifting from grey to a band of pale gold along the horizon, and against that gold you can begin to see the shapes emerging from the tree line across the river. There are many of them. They come from the forest in a loose line, not marching in any military formation, but following one another at intervals of 30 or 40 meters, each enormous animal proceeding with the unhurried dignity of a creature that has nothing to fear from pace. They are Brachiosaurus or something very near to it, their front legs longer than their rear legs, their necks rising at a steep forward angle that lets them browse the high canopy with ease, their bodies the colour of dark stone in this early light, mottled with a pattern of grey and rust brown that breaks up their outline in the forest and in the open floodplain alike. The largest among them, the one at the front, an animal that stands perhaps 12 meters at the shoulder, places each foot with a deliberateness that sends a wave of vibration through the ground, and each wave arrives at your gravel bar as a slow, gentle tremor beneath your palms. They are moving to the river to drink. You understand this from the direction they are moving, from the certainty of their progress, from the fact that they have made this particular walk every morning of this dry season and every dry season before it, following the same route through the same corridor of trees to the same bend in the same river. The route is worn into the landscape you can see, once you know to look for it, a broad depression in the floodplain where the ground has been compacted by thousands of passes of feet the size of flat boulders, where the vegetation grows differently, shorter and more resilient, adapted to the regular passage of weight. The lead animal enters the river. The water breaks around its legs, and the sound it makes, a deep, rushing, liquid impact, is surprisingly soft for the scale of what is happening. It wades to the centre of the river, the water reaching only to the middle of its legs despite the river being several meters deep here, and lowers its head. The neck descends in a long, slow arc, the head meeting the water's surface and drinking with powerful, audible pulls that you can hear from the gravel bar. 20 meters away, a rhythmic, resonant sound, liquid and deep, like the most patient kind of swallowing. Behind the first animal, the others follow. They do not rush. They space themselves along the bank with a natural, unspoken courtesy, each one finding its own section of water, its own angle of approach. The younger animals, smaller, their necks not yet at full height, their proportions slightly different, the head appearing larger relative to the body, stay to the shallower margins, drinking there in the safety of proximity to the adults. One very young animal, perhaps 2 or 3 years old, stands ankle deep in the river's edge and watches the larger animals drink with an expression insofar as dinosaurs can be said to have expressions of simple presence. It is simply there, standing in shallow water, in the morning, in the way that young animals throughout all of time have stood in morning water, attending to nothing particular, missing nothing. Notice what you are feeling as you watch this. Not excitement, or not only excitement, but something quieter than that. Something that lives below named emotions, in the part of the body that responds to the sight of large living things doing what they do, simply and completely. There is a quality of rest in watching creatures that are at ease. When a large animal drinks or sleeps or simply stands in morning water without alarm, something in the human nervous system receives it as information. The world is safe. The world is in order. Nothing is required of you right now. The morning light is strengthening. The gold on the eastern horizon has spread, and the sky above it is warming from grey to blue, with the particular clarity that belongs to mornings in this era, a clarity that will, one day, once particulates and moisture and weather grow more varied, become rarer. For now, the air is simply transparent, a perfect medium for light, and the scene on the riverbank has acquired the quality of something luminous from within. The wet skin of the largest sauropod catches the morning sun along its shoulder and flank, throwing back a dark, liquid gleam. The river surface is all small fire, each ripple and eddy catching a piece of the strengthening light. Some time passes. You are not counting minutes. Time in the Jurassic does not organize itself into minutes. It moves with the sun and the river and the bodies of animals, which is to say it moves slowly and with great certainty. The sauropods finish drinking one by one. The lead animal is the first to turn from the river, climbing the bank with the unhurried power of something that has never needed to hurry. Its feet leaving deep impressions in the soft mud at the water's edge that will harden by midday and remain for months as a record of this particular morning. It pauses at the top of the bank and lifts its head, slowly, to its full height, 15, 16 meters of neck and head rising above the plain, and you can see from this angle, looking up at it, something of what it would be to be this animal, to live at that height, to see the world from that vantage, the forest top spread below you, the river a silver line far down, the morning sky enormous and close. Then it moves on, back into the tree line, moving between the trunks with careful precision, its body navigating gaps that seem too small for it and always finding the way through. The others follow, one by one, in the order they arrived. The youngest animal is last, following the sound of the others into the trees, its footsteps lighter and quicker than theirs, its small head swiveling to check both sides before it crosses the threshold of the forest. And then they are gone, and the floodplain is quiet again, and the only evidence of the morning's gathering is the disturbed mud at the river's edge, the deep pockmarks of their feet already beginning to fill with seeping water at their lowest points. Is there anything more restful than witnessing the ordinary life of an animal at ease? The sauropods were not doing anything dramatic. They were not being dramatic. They came to the river because they needed water. They drank. They left. This is what they do every morning. This is what they will do tomorrow. In 20 million years, this floodplain will have shifted, and the river will have moved, and the tree species will be different, and the family of sauropods that contains this particular animal will have become something else entirely. But somewhere in the descendant landscape, some large animal will be doing the same thing, walking to water, drinking, walking back. The simplicity of the pattern is enormous. It is larger than any individual life. It is the structure within which all individual lives are contained. Your own life is inside this structure too. You came here needing something. You have been taking it in, slowly, without quite articulating it to yourself the way the body takes in water, the way the air takes in light, without announcement and without effort. Lie back down on the gravel if you wish. The morning is still early. The sun is not yet high enough to be warm on your skin, but the gravel has held its night warmth and releases it now steadily and quietly. The river moves. The forest has the sauropods back within it somewhere, browsing the high canopy, and the whole system is in balance, as it has been for longer than you could count. This is the gift of the Jurassic morning. Not drama, not revelation, just the ordinary operations of a world that is working everything, eating and drinking and moving, and resting in the proportions that allow everything else to continue, the great cycling of matter and energy through forms that last for millions of years before they become something else. You are inside that cycle. Right now, lying on this warm gravel in this ordinary morning, you are as much a part of it as the sauropod that just drank from this river. Let that be true. Let it hold you. The microhook that sits inside this hour, somewhere upstream not far, perhaps 2 kilometers of river, the sauropod herd has been followed. Something has been following them for 3 days now. It is patient, and it is large, and it is being described by the marks it leaves in the soft mud at the river's margins. What kind of creature tracks something the size of a building? That question belongs to the middle of the day, when the sun is high and the world is alert. For now, in this early morning, on this gravel bar, with the light just arriving and the river steady in its course, you are safe and comfortable, and there is nothing you need to know that you do not already know. The light moves and you move with it, not urgently, but following the path of least resistance through the landscape, the open ground where walking is easier, the gaps in the understory where the light falls in long wedges that feel like invitations. You have left the river behind you, though you can still hear it at intervals, appearing and disappearing behind screens of vegetation as the land tilts and turns around you. The ground is rising slightly, not a steep climb, a gradual increase in elevation that you feel first in the lengthening of your stride, then in the slight change in the vegetation. The deep river margin ferns give way to sparser growth, the ground cover drier and lower, the larger trees spaced further apart. You are moving toward an open valley, though you do not know this yet. It announces itself first by the sound, a different quality of wind, a slight increase in its movement, as though the valley ahead is breathing. Then by the lighter brightening ahead, the sense of a wider sky somewhere beyond the tree line you are approaching. Then by the smell, which is different here, drier, more resinous, carrying a faint mineral edge that speaks of exposed rock somewhere near. And then you are through the last screen of trees and the valley opens before you, and it takes a moment to understand what you are looking at. The valley is wide and open, its floor a patchwork of low vegetation, an exposed sandy ground and scattered boulders the colour of dried ochre. It is bounded on both sides by ridges of layered rock limestone and sandstone strata in alternating bands, pale and dark, recording in their horizontal lines the long sequence of geological time that deposited them. The sky above the valley is larger and bluer than the forest sky, and against that blue, and against the ochre of the valley floor, the animals that inhabit it are visible from some distance. Stegosaurs, a group of perhaps 8 animals in the middle of the valley, moving in the loose, unhurried way of grazing animals, drifting across the valley floor in the direction of food, pausing, lowering their relatively small heads to browse the vegetation at knee height. Moving on, their plates, the double row of bony structures along their backs, alternating left and right, each one shaped something like an arrowhead, and standing perhaps a metre tall at the peak are what you see first. They catch the morning light and hold it in a way that makes the animals seem, from a distance, almost decorative, as though the valley has been arranged with them in mind. You find a boulder to sit on. It is warm from the sun, which has been hitting this south-facing slope since early morning, and the rock is rough under your hands when you place them on it, a fine-grained sandstone, its surface eroded into small pits and channels by water that has long since moved on. You settle onto it and watch the stegosaurs with the particular quality of attention that belongs to watching animals that do not know you are watching them. The closest animal is perhaps 40 metres away. It is a large one, 3.5, perhaps 4 metres at the hip, its body length 8 or 9 metres including the tail, which it carries just above the ground in the characteristic stegosaur posture, its foretail spikes angled outward and slightly back. The tail is not a weapon that threatens you. In this moment it is simply part of the animal's body, moving slightly as it moves, balanced against the weight of the front end. The animal is eating. It is eating the low-growing ferns and horsetails that grow in the damper patches of the valley floor, cropping them with its small, beak-like mouth in short, efficient motions. The sound this produces, a soft, rhythmic tearing, repeated every few seconds, carries across the quiet valley to where you sit. What is remarkable about the stegosaur in person, rather than as a skeleton in a museum, or as a reconstruction in a documentary, is its completeness. Museum skeletons show the architecture, which is extraordinary, but they cannot show the texture of the skin, a skin that, up close, you can see is finely scaled, the scales tiny and closely packed along the flanks, larger and more widely spaced on the belly, the whole surface a dry, matte grey-green that absorbs light rather than reflecting it. They cannot show the way the animal breathes, the slow rise and fall of the deep barrel chest, the slight expansion of the flanks with each inhale that is visible from 40 metres. And they cannot show the plates, which in life are not bare bone but covered with a skin through which blood vessels run visibly just below the surface, the plates flushed with a faint pink where the morning sun warms them. The plates are one of the Jurassic's most discussed features, discussed by the creatures of your era, who have been arguing about their function since the first complete skeleton was described. Were they for temperature regulation? For display? For defence? For some combination that no single theory captures? In the warm morning of this valley, watching the stegosaur browse, you find that the question answers itself differently than it does in a lecture hall. The plates exist. They catch the sun. They change colour faintly as the animal's mood shifts, or perhaps as its blood pressure shifts, or perhaps simply as the angle of the light changes. They are extraordinary, and they are ordinary, the way all features of living animals are ordinary once you have watched them long enough. They are simply part of what this animal is. One of the smaller stegosaurs, a juvenile, perhaps a quarter of the size of the large adult, its plates proportionally more prominent relative to its body, comes closer to your boulder without appearing to notice you. It approaches a patch of horsetail fern growing in the shadow of a rock to your left, and begins to browse there with the uncomplicated absorption of a young animal, with no concerns beyond the immediate quality of the food. Its eye, which is visible to you from this angle, is a deep amber brown, large in the small head, and it has an expression that you could only call placid, not blank, not unintelligent, but quiet, at rest within itself, not thinking about the past or the future, simply here, in this valley, in this morning, eating this fern. How long since you last felt that way? Simply here, without retrospect or anticipation, eating the particular fern that is in front of you in the particular valley you happen to be in. The stegosaur does not appear to regard this as an achievement. It is not trying to be present. It simply is. The distinction between these two things, trying to be and simply being, is one that your kind has spent considerable time and effort investigating without quite resolving. The stegosaur, browsing its fern in this morning valley, seems to have resolved it without effort. The valley is warming now as the sun climbs. The shadows that stretched long from every rock and plant when you arrived have shortened and retreated, pulling back toward their sources, and the floor of the valley has moved from the cool amber of early morning to the brighter, more insistent gold of mid-morning. The stegosaurs feel this too, you can see it in their behavior. Two of the adults have moved toward the larger boulders on the valley's western margin, positioning themselves in what shade remains there, their bodies oriented to minimize their exposure to the increasing sun. They are managing their temperature with the same practical simplicity with which they do everything else. You lean back against the boulder behind you. Your own temperature is comfortable, the rock at your back is warm rather than hot, the breeze in the valley is gentle, and you have not moved quickly enough today to generate much of your own heat. Your body is at that particular equilibrium that invites sleep, not cold, not too warm, not hungry, not in discomfort. Simply physically comfortable, in a way that the body interprets as permission to go quiet. The stegosaurs in the valley have been here, in this valley, every morning, for as long as this valley has had vegetation worth eating. They will be here tomorrow morning. Their great-grandchildren will be here in 100 years. Their more distant descendants will inhabit this valley until the valley itself changes, until the rivers shift their courses and the sediment loads change, and the vegetation responds, and the valley becomes something else. Slowly, over thousands of years, and the stegosaur lineage either adapts or moves on. All of this is so slow that no individual animal experiences it as change. Each animal simply lives its life in the world it finds itself in, browsing its fern, warming its plates in the morning sun, sleeping in the afternoon shade of a warm boulder. What does it ask of the world, this animal? Not much. Warmth, food within reach, enough distance between itself and the things that threaten it to allow for ordinary days. You find, lying back against your boulder with the valley spread before you, and the sound of the stegosaur's slow browsing coming across the warm air, that these requirements sound familiar. That stripped of all your era's particular complications, they are your requirements too: warmth, food, safety enough for ordinary days. The stegosaur's life is not diminished by its simplicity. It is clarified by it. Time has moved, as it does here, not with the mechanical tick of a clock, but with the slow, certain movement of light across the sky. The valley is behind you now. The land has continued its gentle rise and then, unexpectedly, dropped away sharply at a limestone escarpment, and you have descended, more carefully than you climbed, down its layered face to the shore of something you were not expecting. Water. But not the river. A sea. Or rather what will one day be called the Sundance Sea. A shallow epicontinental seaway that in this era covers much of the interior of the continent, filling the low basin between the young western mountains and the older, flatter lands to the east. It is not deep, perhaps 60 or 80 meters at its greatest depth, shallow enough that sunlight reaches the bottom almost everywhere, transforming the water from the green blue of true ocean to the particular warm turquoise that belongs to shallow tropical water over pale substrate. You are standing on a beach. Not a beach with waves, the sea here is too enclosed, too sheltered by surrounding land for significant wave action. The water moves against the shore in long, slow surges that spend themselves without drama on the fine white sand, retreating with a sound like the deepest exhale you have ever heard. The sand is warm under your feet, white and fine, composed of the ground calcium carbonate of countless marine organisms, the shells and tests and plates of creatures you cannot see but whose bodies have been building this beach for thousands of years, layer by layer, the same way all beaches are built. When you pick up a handful of it and let it fall between your fingers, it makes almost no sound, just a soft, dry whisper, the quietest material you have ever touched. Sit down at the water's edge. The wet sand at the tide line is cooler than the dry sand above it, and where the most recent surge has retreated, it has left a dark line of moisture that catches the light. The water is very clear. You can see the bottom easily pale sand, slightly rippled by the movement of the water, with occasional dark patches where something lives attached to the substrate. Small animals move at the margins of your vision in the water quick. Silvery shapes that are fish, though not fish of the kind you would recognize. Fish that are early versions of families that will eventually become the fish of your era. Still recognizably fish, but with proportions and features that are subtly unfamiliar. The Jurassic Sea is full of life. Not the kind of life you can see from the shore. Most of it is deeper, more hidden, more varied than anything the surface suggests. But the surface suggests enough. Floating on the water, visible from where you sit as dark, lens-shaped forms, perhaps a meter across, are colonies of jellyfish, or what will eventually be called jellyfish. Though the jellyfish of this era are not quite the jellyfish of yours, their translucent forms slightly different in proportion, their trailing filaments longer and more numerous. They drift in the current that moves the surface water very slowly south along this shore, passive and unhurried, receiving whatever food the current carries to them. Their movement is the most patient kind of movement, not directed toward anything, not departing from anything, simply carried. In the distance, perhaps 200 meters out, something breaks the surface. Not dramatically. Not with the explosive violence of a dolphin's jump or a whale's breach, more like a slow emergence. First a curve of smooth dark back, then the suggestion of a long neck, then the head, which pauses at the surface for a moment before sinking again without hurry. A plesiosaur, a marine reptile that is not a dinosaur but an equally ancient lineage. Its forelimbs evolved over millions of years into broad, powerful flippers, its neck long and its body compact in the way that efficient swimmers are compact. It has surfaced to breathe. Its lungs, like yours, require air, and it will sink again into the warm, sunlit water to continue its hunting of the fish and cephalopods that crowd the Sundance Sea. Notice the quality of the light on the water. The afternoon sun is lower now than it was. You have been moving all day. Slow and steady, and the light hits the water at an angle that makes the surface into a field of small, brilliant lights. Each wave facet catching the sun for a fraction of a second before another takes its place. The effect is hypnotic in the literal sense. Your eyes attempt to track the individual flashes and cannot. Your focus softens and spreads, and the whole surface becomes something other than a specific visual object. It becomes a quality of light, a vibration, something that the eyes cannot quite fix, and so the mind releases. This is one of the sea's gifts. Surfaces in motion, water, fire, wind through grass produce a visual stimulus that the human brain can neither ignore nor fully process. And in that space between ignoring and processing, something happens that feels like rest. Your thoughts slow. The narrative in your head, the one that runs commentary on everything, quietens. The sea is not interesting enough to demand your full attention and not boring enough to allow your mind to wander. It holds you in the space between, and that space is the space where sleep lives. Lie back on the warm sand. Close your eyes if you want the sound of the sea is sufficient. That long, slow surge and retreat, the same rhythm that has been moving water against sand since there was water and sand, the rhythm that your nervous system recognizes at some deep, cellular level as the rhythm of safety, of open space, of the impersonal attention of the world's largest entity. The ocean does not care about your difficulties. It is not indifferent. It is simply larger than caring and not caring. It is simply the sea, doing what the sea does, in the way it has always done it. You are perhaps wondering about the plesiosaur, whether it might come closer, whether the shore is safe. It is safe. The plesiosaur is a hunter of fish and smaller marine animals, not of things on the beach. It will not come into the shallows where you are resting, and even if it could see you from where it swims, you are nothing it has any experience of. You are outside its category of familiar things, and what is outside a category is not a threat. It continues its slow passage through the green water, surfacing to breathe every 20 minutes or so, following the school of fish it has been tracking all afternoon, and the sea between it and the shore is simply sea. The afternoon is long here. The Jurassic day is almost exactly the same length as the day of your era. The planet rotates at very nearly the same speed, but time feels different when it is not structured by clocks and commitments. It simply flows. The light changes, but gradually. The temperature changes, but gently. The sea maintains its slow, patient movement against the shore, each surge exactly as long and exactly as quiet as the one before it, each retreat exactly as complete. You are inside this rhythm now. Your breathing has matched itself to it without your noticing. There are shells along the high tide line behind you, the record of what the sea brings and leaves. Ammonites mostly, the coiled cephalopods that are among the most successful animals in the Jurassic Sea, their shells a perfect logarithmic spiral that has been refined over hundreds of millions of years into its present form. Some are tiny, the size of your thumbnail. Some are larger than your hand. All of them are beautiful, in the way that mathematical forms are beautiful, the spiral visible in the cross-section, the chambers revealed where a wave has cracked one open, each chamber a thin wafer of empty space that the animal built around itself and then abandoned as it grew and built the next one. A life of outgrowing chambers, a life of always moving forward into the next space. The sun is moving toward the western horizon. The light on the sea is changing now, the scattered diamond light of afternoon becoming the warmer, more liquid gold of pre-sunset, the shadows on the sand lengthening eastward, the temperature dropping almost imperceptibly. The plesiosaur has moved further along the shore, following its own agenda. The jellyfish continue their patient drifting. The water maintains its rhythm against your chosen beach, as though it has been doing this specifically for you, as though the entire Jurassic Sea arranged itself today around the single purpose of giving you a place to rest. Dawn again. You have lost track of the days, not in an alarming way, but in the way of someone who has been away from clocks long enough to stop needing them. The light tells you what you need to know. It is very early, the sky still dark to the west and only beginning to lighten in the east, the stars still visible in the half-dark of pre-dawn. You are back in the forest, back among the tall conifers and the cycad understory, lying on a bed of deep moss that has accepted your weight like something that was designed for it. There is a sound in the forest that is different from the night sounds. Not alarming, you are not alarmed, but different. A sound of weight, and of deliberateness, and of patience. Something large is moving through the trees some distance to your north, moving slowly enough that you hear it only in intervals, a heavy footfall on forest floor, the crackling compression of dead wood, then silence, then another footfall. The intervals are long. Whatever is moving is in no hurry. You can see it, after a time, in the growing pre-dawn light that filters through the canopy, a large dark shape moving between the tree trunks, visible briefly, and then screened by intervening vegetation, and then briefly visible again. It is an Allosaurus, the apex predator of the Morrison Formation, the largest active carnivore in this landscape, and one of the creatures that your era's popular science has turned into a figure of pure terror. Here, moving through the forest in the pre-dawn quiet, it is something else. Not peaceful. Exactly, there is nothing peaceful about a 7-ton predator but composed, contained. Moving through the world with the particular quality of focus that belongs to an animal that understands its own power and is not anxious about it. It has not noticed you. You are downwind and still, lying in the moss with your breathing slow and your body warm, and the Allosaurus is attending to other things, following a trail through the forest, its head low and slightly to the side, its nostrils testing the air with each step. The crest above its eye, a ridge of rugose bone that runs from the front of the orbit backward along the skull, catches the first pale light and throws it back in a dull gleam. The skin of its face is textured and dry-looking, a deep grey-brown with faint suggestions of darker patterning along the jaw and neck. Its eye, visible when it turns its head toward you momentarily, is gold and has within it a quality of focused attention that is not quite intelligence as you understand it, but is not quite the absence of it either. Watch the way it moves. This is something the fossil record cannot give you the way a large theropod moves in life. The skeleton suggests a posture and a gait, but the living animal reveals something the bones cannot. The fluid quality of the movement, the way the enormous body is counterbalanced precisely by the long, muscular tail that swings fractionally with each step to maintain equilibrium, the way the head bobs very slightly with the rhythm of the walk, in a way that looks, if you squint slightly, almost bird-like, because it is bird-like. Because the birds of your era are the direct descendants of this lineage, and the head movement, the quick sideways tilt that the Allosaurus gives its head when it detects something interesting in the air, is recognizable as the same movement a raven makes, or a large parrot, or any of the intelligent corvids that inherit this animal's basic head movement vocabulary across 150 million years. It is tracking something. The direction it is moving northwest, toward the river, suggests the sauropod herd. not in pursuit, not running or even hurrying, simply following the trail of their passage, learning the patterns of their movement through this part of the forest. The Allosaurus does not typically take a healthy adult sauropod. The risk is too high, the energy expenditure too great, but it knows the herd's habits. It knows which individuals are young or old or injured. It carries this knowledge with the practical efficiency of an animal whose survival depends on applying it at the right moment. This is intelligence, of a kind. Not the kind that builds cities or writes narratives, but the kind that accumulates information about the world and deploys it purposefully, that understands cause and effect, that can model the future movements of another creature based on past patterns. The Allosaurus does not think in words about what it knows. But it knows, and it moves through the pre-dawn forest with that knowledge distributed through its body, expressed in the angle of its head and the direction of its walk, and the careful spacing of its steps to minimize noise. It passes at perhaps 60 meters from where you lie. 60 meters is not very far. You can feel the vibration of each footfall clearly through the ground. A soft, rhythmic pulse transmitted through the forest floor. You can smell it, faintly. A complex smell, not pleasant and not terrible. The smell of a large, warm body that has been moving through the forest since before dawn, carrying within it the biological processes of a great predator at work. It does not stop. It does not turn. It moves past you with the certainty of an animal in its own territory, following its own logic, attending to the world through its own senses in a way that leaves no room for what does not fit its current task. When it has gone, when the footfalls have receded, and the forest has absorbed the last vibration of its passage, and the smell has dispersed in the morning air, something changes in the quality of your attention. It is not relief, though there is perhaps something in the neighbourhood of relief. It is more like the particular sharpness of the world that follows the presence of something very large and very real. The forest is not less beautiful when an Allosaurus moves through it. It is more beautiful, in the way that a landscape is more beautiful when you know that it is not just scenery but the living context of real lives being seriously lived. The pre-dawn has become dawn. While you are watching the Allosaurus, the light has continued its transition. The east is now fully rosy, the canopy above you visible in detail, the individual leaves distinct against the brightening sky. The forest has begun its morning activity. The bird-lined dinosaurs in the canopy are singing their fractured, complex songs. Insects are resuming their constant small business in the understory. Somewhere nearby, a small theropod is doing something in the leaf litter that produces a soft, steady rustling. The world is fully awake. And you? Your body is comfortable in the moss, warm and well supported. The events of the past hour receding into the general textures of the morning, the way a dream recedes when you try to hold it. You know that the Allosaurus is somewhere to the north of you, following the sauropod trail toward the river, doing what it does in the morning forest. You know that this is the ordinary business of this landscape, that predator and prey have been maintaining this particular relationship in this particular forest for millions of years, that the relationship is not tragic or cruel but simply real, the mechanism by which the landscape sustains its balance of life against death, against life. Your own breathing has returned to the slow, deep rhythm that belongs to rest. Your eyes are not quite focused. The canopy above you is a general impression of green and gold rather than a collection of individual leaves and branches. Your body has made its decision about the direction of the morning without consulting your mind, and the decision is downward, toward sleep, toward the deep, uncomplicated rest of an animal in a safe place, in a world that is going about its ancient business without requiring anything of you. The Allosaurus question, the one that might seem to have required worry, that might have demanded alertness, has resolved itself without drama. You are here, and it is there, and the distance between you is 60 meters of forest floor and the whole wide morning. Whatever it finds to eat today will sustain it, and tomorrow it will move through this forest again, following its knowledge of the landscape, and the landscape will continue to be the landscape. Everything is inside everything else here. The predator is inside the ecosystem, and the ecosystem is inside the Jurassic, and the Jurassic is inside time, and time is the one thing that has no outside. Sleep, if you are ready. The morning will continue whether you watch it or not. The forest will manage its own affairs. The Allosaurus has a long walk ahead of it, and the sauropods have a morning of browsing ahead of them, and the river will continue its patient movement toward the sea. None of it requires your attention. None of it will stop being what it is if you close your eyes. Let the Jurassic morning have your attention, or release it either way. The morning continues. You have found the cliffs. They are not dramatic cliffs, not sheer drops of 100 meters, but they are cliffs enough. A face of pale limestone, perhaps 30 meters high, that runs along the coast where the land meets the Sundance Sea, eroded at the base by the gentle action of the sea over thousands of years, into a series of shallow caves and overhangs and ledges that catch the afternoon light and hold it in warm, amber pools. The sea is below and to your right. Above you, the cliff face rises to a limestone plateau, where thin soil supports a scrubby growth of cycad and conifer. You are sitting on a broad ledge, perhaps 2/3 of the way up the cliff face, reached by a relatively easy scramble from the beach below. The ledge is wide enough to sit on comfortably, wide enough to stretch out on if you chose a natural shelf in the limestone, about 1.5 meters deep, its floor smoothed by water and wind into something close to flat. The stone under you is warm. The breeze from the sea reaches you here, carrying salt and the green smell of the water, and it is not cold, just movement of warm air across your face and arms, refreshing rather than chilling. From this ledge you can see in 3 directions. To the south, the sea extends to the horizon, that broad, warm turquoise to blue gradient that you spent part of yesterday beside, now slightly reduced by distance to a vast expanse of colour and movement. To the east, the beach curves away along the base of the cliff, interrupted at intervals by rock formations and the occasional delta of a small stream reaching the sea. To the west, the cliff runs along the coast, and the limestone columns and caves that punctuate it are visible as darker openings in the pale face, each one the home of something, the pterosaurs. You have been watching them for some time, since before you climbed to this ledge, watching them from the beach below, small shapes in the air above the cliff that seemed at first to be large birds. But birds do not move quite like this. Birds bank and turn with their wings held in a characteristic arc, their tail feathers spreading to control the maneuver. These often can differently, their wings, formed from a membrane of skin, stretch from the enormously elongated 4th finger to the body and hind limb, change shape in flight in a way that is more fluid and more responsive than any feathered wing. They look, in certain moments of their flight, more like wet cloth caught in a wind than like anything you have a word for. The colony on these cliffs is substantial. You can see, from your ledge, perhaps 30 or 40 animals either in the air or roosting on the cliff face. The roosting ones hang from their feet in the manner of bats upside down, from ledges and overhangs, their wings folded tight against their bodies, their heads tucked or occasionally raised to survey the sea below. Some are the size of a large gull. Some are considerably larger, their wingspans when they spread and launch into the air reaching 3 or 4 meters, and the sound of those wings catching the air, a deep, leathery percussion, reaches you clearly on the ledge. Watch one launch itself from the cliff. The animal is hanging from a ledge perhaps 5 meters above you and to your right. It releases its grip, drops briefly in free fall just 1 meter or so, and then the wings unfold with a rapidity that your eye almost cannot follow, spreading from the folded position to full extension in what seems like a single motion. The membrane catches the updraft that rises along the cliff face, and the animal arcs outward over the sea in a long banking curve, losing almost no altitude, riding the thermal lift with the facility of something that has been doing exactly this for its entire life. Now it is above the water, perhaps 20 meters out from the cliff face and 20 meters above the surface. It holds its position against the wind, barely moving its wings, making small adjustments with the membrane, its head angled downward to watch the water below. The posture is familiar from birds of your era, the posture of something hunting, watching, waiting for the movement that will tell it where its food is. The patience of the predator in the moment before the strike is one of the most intensely focused kinds of patience in the animal world. Everything suspended, everything aimed at the single point of attention below, every muscle ready and held still. But from your ledge, with the sea stretching to the horizon and the warm light on the limestone and the breeze in your face, that focused patience translates into something that looks, from the outside, remarkably like rest. The strike, when it comes, is unhurried looking in the way that very fast things are unhurried looking. The action completed before your eye has quite registered the decision. The pterosaur tips forward, drops, the head plunges into the water for a fraction of a second, and then it is back in the air with a small silver fish in its beak, already climbing, the catch accomplished, and the animal returning to altitude with no break in the smooth logic of its flight. It swallows the fish while still in the air, a tilt of the head and a visible muscular movement along the neck, and then returns to its hovering position over the water to begin again. You are aware, from your ledge, of being high up, not uncomfortably so. There is no vertigo here. The ledge is wide enough and the wall behind you solid enough that your body does not feel precarious. But the height gives you a perspective you have not had from the ground. You can see the pattern of the sea surface from above, the way the light falls differently on the areas of deeper water versus the shallow zones near the shore, the way the fish schools visible as darker masses below the surface move as units, turning and reforming with the precision of a single organism. The pterosaurs know this pattern. They have learned which schools move in which directions, which depths produce which species, which weather conditions concentrate the fish near the surface. They carry this knowledge the way the Allosaurus carries its knowledge of the sauropod herd distributed through the body, expressed in movement and attention, accumulated through the lived experience of many hours over many years. The light is changing as the afternoon progresses. The sea is turning from turquoise to the deeper blue of late afternoon, and the horizon is becoming slightly hazy where the sea meets the sky. The pterosaurs on the cliff are coming in more frequently now, the fishing apparently better in this part of the day, and the colony is more animated. There are vocalizations from the roosting animals, a variety of sounds you have not tried to characterize because they resist characterization, somewhere between the honks of seabirds and the lower sounds of something with a larger throat. Your ledge has been growing more comfortable over the course of the afternoon. Your body has settled into it, found the contours that accommodate your weight, and the stone is warm enough under you that the contact is pleasant rather than hard. Your eyes, fixed on the sea and the flying animals for the past several hours, are pleasantly tired, not the tired of strain, but the tired of having been used, of having attended to beautiful things until attention itself has become a kind of rest. Is there a question you find yourself holding about this place? About the cliff, or the sea, or the animals that move between them? The question that lives here, the one that the afternoon light poses without urgency, is something like, what does it feel like to move the way they move? To unfold a membrane of skin against a thermal and let the rising air carry you out over the water without effort, the world below you blue and silver and vast? You cannot know, from the ledge, but you can imagine, an imagination, in the body that is becoming comfortable and heavy on the warm stone, feels a great deal like dreaming. Let yourself drift. Let the sea be below you in your imagination, the cliff at your back, the warm air moving. The pterosaurs continue their work, their patient, repetitive, effortless-looking work of riding thermals and reading water and diving and climbing and riding again. They do not get tired of it. It is not work to them. It is simply what they do in the afternoon, on this coast, in this era, as they will do tomorrow and the day after, and for as many days as they are alive to do it. The sea receives them and releases them, the cliff holds the ones that rest, and the whole system turns on the same axle as the world. Somewhere below you, the beach is darkening as the sun moves west. The shadows of the cliff are lengthening out across the sand, cool and soft-edged. The sea is still lit, the surface still catching the afternoon sun, but the angle is lower and the quality of the light has changed to something warmer and more golden, the kind of light that makes everything it touches look like something you have been looking for. The limestone of your ledge holds that light and releases it slowly. You are warm and comfortable and high above the sea in the Jurassic afternoon, and the world below you is very beautiful and very far away. If you are drifting now, let yourself go. Subscribe so the next story is waiting when you return. Sleep well. The darkness of the Jurassic night is something you have been approaching for some time all day, perhaps in the way that sleep approaches during a long, comfortable day, gradually, imperceptibly, in increments so small that you do not notice the transition until you are already inside it. Now, you are inside it. The cliff and the sea are behind you. You have found your way back, by some instinct or some gentle following of the land's contours, to the forest, to the deep, enclosed world under the canopy, where the darkness is complete and saturated and smells of living things in every stage of their existence. But the night forest is not silent. You knew this already from the sounds you heard on your first night here, but knowing it and being inside it are different things. The insects are the dominant sound still, as they were then, a layered, complex chord that fills the air from ground to canopy. But within that chord you can now distinguish individual elements that the first night was too new for you to hear separately. There is a high-frequency component, almost at the edge of your hearing, that comes from very small insects in the dry bark of the trees. There is a lower, more pulsing component from something in the leaf litter. There is a mid-range, steady tone from something in the ferns that cycles in a rhythm of about 2 seconds on and 1 second off, repeated without variation. The darkness has its own kind of seeing. Your eyes have adjusted to it, or rather, they have adjusted to what little light exists. The diffuse sky glow of the stars through the canopy, the occasional bioluminescent fungi on a fallen log that you pass, the faint phosphorescence of some organisms in the undergrowth that you would need daylight to identify. By these means, you can see enough. The shapes of the trees are solid against the less dark sky. The ground, where the canopy thins slightly, is visible as a textured darkness. The lighter patches of bare sandy soil, the darker patches of leaf litter, the absolute dark of shadows. There is a body of scientific thought, in your era, about the evolutionary significance of sleep, about why all animals sleep, even when sleep makes them vulnerable, even when the calories burned in remaining awake would seem to be a better investment for survival. The answer, as best your era has determined, is something to do with consolidation with the brain's need for periods of reduced input in which to process, organize, and integrate everything that has been received during waking hours. The Jurassic animals around you sleep for this reason too, or for the evolutionary precursor of this reason. The sauropods sleep, standing or lying, for several hours each night. The small theropods sleep in sheltered spots, their metabolism slightly reduced, their bodies conserving the energy they have spent during the day's hunting. The stegosaurs sleep in groups, adults surrounding the young, their bodies warm from the day's accumulated heat. You are among sleeping animals tonight. Not close enough to see them, you are in the forest, and they are wherever they sleep, but close enough to know, from the quality of the night, that the landscape around you is full of resting bodies. The Allosaurus sleeps too, not as deeply as you would sleep, with one part of its nervous system maintaining a lower level awareness of its surroundings, but genuinely resting, its metabolic rate reduced, its enormous body stretched out on the forest floor somewhere you cannot see. The forest at night is a vast dormitory, everyone in their chosen spot, everything quiet except the insects who do not sleep, but whose constancy is itself a kind of silence within which the sleeping goes on. What are the small animals doing in the night? There are small animals active in the Jurassic night, the forerunners of mammals, tiny creatures that are not yet quite mammals but are heading in that direction, their warm blood allowing them to be active in the cooler night air when the reptiles around them must rest. They move through the leaf litter with astonishing speed, small and quick and very warm, following the scent trails of insects and seeds and fungi. You cannot see them. You can occasionally hear them, a brief rustle in the dry leaves somewhere close, a tiny squeak that might be communication or might be nothing at all. And then they are gone again, too fast and too small to follow. Find a place to rest. There is a spot ahead of you, a slight depression in the ground between two large root buttresses, floored with the softest accumulation of shed fronds and decomposing bark you have encountered, sheltered from the slight movement of the night air by the root buttresses on either side. It is exactly the right size. Lie down in it. Gee. Feel the ground receive you, the soft material compressing slightly under your weight, releasing a faint smell of warm wood and soil and the biological richness of slowly composting matter. The smell is not unpleasant. It is the smell of the forest floor, which is the smell of life returning to life, and it is as old as the forest itself. Here is what you should know about this depression. It has been used before, and not only by you. The hollowing of the ground here, the particular softness of its floor, the way it is sheltered from above by an overhang of root, speaks of repeated occupation by animals that needed exactly what it offers. Some other creature has been resting here regularly, long enough to shape the ground to itself. You are borrowing its bed. The forest has many such beds, small, animal-shaped depressions in the ground, in the leaf litter, in the shelter of roots and fallen logs. shaped over years of nightly occupation by warm-bodied things that needed to rest somewhere safe and warm and hidden. Tonight, this one is yours. The stars are not visible from here. The canopy closes completely overhead. You are in the deepest part of the forest, away from the river and the coast and any opening in the trees. The darkness is complete, and the smell of the forest is your only sense of the world beyond your immediate body, and even that is fading as you settle and the air around you warms slightly from your own heat. Your world is becoming very small and very immediate. The warmth of the ground beneath you, the softness of the frond mat, the smell of earth and wood, the layered sound of the insects that is so continuous you are starting to hear it not as sound, but as silence of a particular texture. Notice your body. Notice where it touches the ground. Notice where it is warm at your back and the backs of your thighs and your heels, where the contact with the earth is most complete. Notice where the air is cool at your face and hands. The surface is exposed to the forest air, which moves across them very gently and carries the cool of the night. This difference, warm where you are held, cool where you are open, is the body's version of the landscape you have been moving through all day. A place of warm, solid support below and open, breathing air above. Your eyes have stopped trying to see. There is nothing to see here. The darkness is complete, and even your adjusted night vision finds nothing to hold. So the eyes, denied their usual purpose, simply rest. The muscles that move them relax. The eyelids, which have been working all day, go still. Everything behind them softens. The thoughts that have been accompanying you through the day, the observations, the responses to what you have been seeing and hearing are quietening, not gone, not suppressed, just quietening, the way a fire quietens when you stop adding wood to it. Still present, still warm, but lower and less active, the orange glow dimming toward red, toward the comfortable dark of coals. The night forest holds you. It is doing this without attention or effort. It is simply what the night forest is, a place of enclosed warmth and continuous sound and the smell of life at rest. Animals have been sleeping in it for as long as it has existed. Their sleeping is part of what the forest is. Your sleeping, tonight, is part of what the forest is too. You are not a visitor for whom an exception is being made. You are a body that needs rest, in a place that provides it, in a world that has been providing rest to bodies since there were bodies to rest. Let the thought go. Let the next thought go too. Let the forest sound the insects, the faint creak of a branch settling, the far-off call of something you no longer need to identify. Let it be the last thing you are aware of, the texture against which everything else dissolves. The night is very long. The forest is very deep. You are very comfortable. These 3 facts are all the facts you need. Sleep. The Jurassic will be here when you surface. The morning will come slowly, gradually, the darkness thinning by degrees, the birds beginning in the canopy, the sauropods walking to the river, the Allosaurus returning from wherever it spent the night. All of it will be here. The question is simply whether you choose to be here for it, or whether you follow the invitation of this warm hollow in the forest floor into the deeper country that lies below all of this, below the Jurassic, below the present moment, below even the body that rests here into the place that is both nowhere and the most particular here you have ever been. The smell of rain reaches you before the rain does. You know this smell. Everyone knows this smell. It has a name in your era that comes from the Greek words for rock and rain. Petrichor, the word for the smell of wet earth, and activated geosmin, and the released oils of dry vegetation, the smell of the world's surface receiving water after a period without it. The smell is the same here as it is in your own time. Of course it is. Rain and rock and vegetation have been producing it for hundreds of millions of years. Some things do not change. You are at the edge of the forest, in a broad open area between the trees and the floodplain, sitting on a slight rise of ground that gives you a view across the flat bottomland toward the river. The sky has changed since morning. What was a clean, empty blue is now a complex architecture of cloud, the shapes of cumulus rising in towering columns to the southwest, lit from within by the afternoon sun, so that their upper surfaces are brilliant white and their lower surfaces are a deep bruised grey. The air has changed too heavier, more charged, with a quality of held breath that you feel in the pressure in your ears and the slight heightening of your own alertness. The rains are coming. In the Jurassic, the return of the wet season to this part of the floodplain is not a gradual increase in precipitation over weeks. It arrives. The weather systems that produce the seasonal rains are larger and more dramatic than anything in your era's temperate climate zones. Vast atmospheric cells that have been building over the warm interior sea for months, accumulating moisture and energy. And when they break completely. Rivers that have been running knee-deep through a dry season will be, within days, bank full and overflowing, spreading across the floodplain in wide, brown, slow-moving sheets of water. The animals know this is coming. You can see it in the landscape. The sauropod herd has moved. They are no longer at the river bend where you watched them drink on that first morning. They have moved to higher ground, following an instinct that knows the difference between drinking river and drowning river. The stegosaurs in the valley have also moved. Their pattern changed from the broad ranging of the dry season to a more concentrated occupation of the valley's higher margins. Even the small theropods seem different today, quicker, more directed, their movements purposeful in a way they have not been. The first lightning. It is distant far enough that the thunder arrives 8 seconds after the flash, a long rolling sound that seems to come from the whole southwestern sky rather than any single point within it. The flash itself was broad and branched, illuminating the underside of the cloud mass for a fraction of a second and making the afternoon, in that fraction, simultaneously more vivid and more strange. The cloud mass is closer than it was when you first noticed it. It is moving northeast, the direction of the wind that has been freshening for the past hour, and it has that particular quality of purposeful advance that belongs to a serious weather system. Move back under the trees. Not urgently, there is time, and the place you are moving to is comfortable and familiar, the root buttress alcove where you have rested before, the deep moss floor still warm from the morning. The trees here are old enough and tall enough to have weathered many wet seasons. They know what to do with rain. Their bark channels it, their root systems absorb it, their canopy disperses it into the million smaller drops that fall through the layered vegetation to the ground. A Jurassic rainforest in the wet season is not a place you would choose to be in the open. Under the trees, though, the experience of rain is something else. The first drops arrive before you have quite settled. Large drops fat with collected atmospheric water, much larger than the drops that fall in gentle rain, and they hit the canopy above you with individual impacts. You can hear as distinct sounds before the rain grows more continuous, and the sounds merge into a general rush. Through the canopy, most of the rain is caught and held and released slowly, the amount that reaches the forest floor under the large trees reduced to a fraction of what is falling above. What does reach you is a diffuse, intermittent dripping drops falling from the tips of leaves above you, carrying the temperature of the leaf surface rather than the cold of the sky, warm and soft and infrequent enough that each one is distinguishable. The smell intensifies as the rain reaches the forest floor. The petrichor that preceded the rain is now mixed with the smells of wet bark, wet leaf litter, the released vapor of living vegetation responding to moisture, a complex, a live smell that fills your lungs with something the body recognizes as nourishment, even though it is not food. The smell of rain on this forest has been here before you and will be here long after you, and everything about it speaks of continuity, of cycles, of the patient repetition of patterns that have no beginning you could reach and no end you could witness. The sound of the rain on the canopy is magnificent. This is something that no recording can quite capture, the total surround sound quality of being inside a rainstorm in a dense forest, the way the sound comes from above, and all around, and even from below, as drops strike the wet ground around you and the roots and the moss, the way individual drops on individual leaves produce individual sounds that merge into a sustained, complex, endlessly varying whole. It is not a simple sound. It is more like music than weather. If music could be this unself-conscious and this complete, your root buttress alcove is dry. The root above you, thick and arching, deflects the limited rain that reaches this part of the forest, and the moss beneath you is merely cool and pleasantly damp at its surface rather than wet. You are warm. Your back is against the bark, and the bark is giving back the warmth it has stored from the day's sun and the residual warmth of your body. You are enclosed the root buttresses on either side, the canopy above, the forest all around in the Jurassic's equivalent of a room. 4 natural walls, a natural roof, a natural floor, and outside the walls the patient sound of the rain doing its seasonal work. What does the Jurassic do with all this rain? The floodplain will hold it first, spreading in wide, flat sheets of water that will be a centimetre deep over most of the plain and deeper in the channels and low spots. The river will rise for days and then for weeks, eventually cresting well above its dry season level, inundating the lower margins of the forest with the same brown, slow water that will, when it recedes, leave a layer of fine silt across everything it touched. New soil, new fertility, the ground renewed, as it always is by the periodic flooding that has been shaping this landscape for as long as this river has existed. The seeds of the forest plants have been waiting for this. Some of them have been waiting for months, through the long dry season, dry themselves and held in dormancy by the absence of the water they need to germinate. The first rain triggers them not all at once, but in a staggered sequence over the following days and weeks, as the ground becomes consistently saturated and the air remains warm and wet. New growth appears in the forest understory with extraordinary speed, the ferns and horsetails pushing new fronds out of the moist ground, the cycad pups that have been biding their time, extending their first leaves toward the filtered light. The world is being renewed. This is what the wet season means. In every era that has had wet seasons, a renewal, a refilling, a return of what was absent. The forest knows it. The animals know it. The river knows it in the sense that it rises and spreads in response to exactly the input it has always received in the same season at the same time, doing what rivers do, which is to receive everything that flows into them and carry it forward. You are inside this renewal too, not metaphorically physically. The damp air is in your lungs, the sound of the rain is in your ears, the smell of the wet forest floor is in your body, with every breath. The Jurassic wet season does not ask for your acknowledgement. It simply occurs, and you are inside it, warm and sheltered, and listening to one of the oldest sounds the world makes. Let it be the last thing you track tonight. Let the rain do the work of filling the world, while you let everything else be filled with the simple warm darkness of rest. The rain has passed. Not all of it, the wet season has only just begun, and there will be many more rainstorms before the dry air returns, but this particular cell has moved on toward the northeast, and in its wake, the world has that particular clarity that belongs to post-rain afternoons, every surface washed and gleaming, the air washed and transparent, the light coming through it with a quality almost photographic in its definition. The forest smells of everything it is, every species of tree and fern and fungi, contributing its particular volatiles to the saturated air, producing a complexity of smell that you cannot pass but can only receive. You have followed the sound of something you could not quite identify. A collective, continuous sound, lower and more varied than the insect chorus, that has been coming from a specific direction to your east for the past hour of walking. Now you have arrived at its source, and the source is something you were not quite prepared for. The nesting ground occupies a broad, open area where the forest has been pushed back by the repeated flooding of a seasonal lake that fills in the wet season and dries in the dry season. The lake is beginning to refill now, its edges already showing the first centimetres of standing water over the pale, cracked mud of the dry season surface. Around the lake's edge, in a roughly semicircular arrangement that extends for several hundred metres, are the nests. They are large structures, low mounds of vegetation and mud, perhaps 1 metre high and 2 metres across, built by the dinosaurs that are now either standing beside them or moving slowly around them in the particular deliberate way of animals attending to something important. The animals are large ornithopods, something between what your era calls Camptosaurus and Iguanodon, though the exact lineage is less important than the reality of them. Big, heavy-bodied dinosaurs that move on all fours when grazing and on 2 legs when alert or moving quickly. The colony here is substantial, perhaps 60 individuals in the part you can see, probably more beyond the curve of the lakeshore. They are noisier than anything else you have encountered in the Jurassic. The vocalizations are continuous and varied, low, resonant calls that carry easily across the open area, shorter, sharper sounds that might be contact calls or warning calls, or simply the animal equivalent of conversation. Why nest here? The seasonal lake provides protection. Predators are reluctant to cross open water, and the lake, even in its current shallow state, presents a barrier that a nesting colony of large dinosaurs can benefit from. The mud around its edge is warm from the sun, an excellent incubator for eggs. The open ground provides visibility. Adults at the nest can see threats approaching from some distance. The social energy of the colony itself is a defense. 60 large dinosaurs are more than most predators want to contend with. You can see nests in various stages of the breeding cycle. Some hold eggs, though, from your position at the edge of the colony. You cannot see the eggs themselves, only the low-profile posture of adults crouched over their mounds, bodies positioned to incubate or shade. Others have already hatched. Around these nests, there are very small animals, perhaps 30 centimeters long, that move with the slightly uncoordinated energy of newborns, staying very close to the nest and to the adult that tends it. The adult's attention is complete and constant. The head never quite stops moving, scanning, and the body is always positioned between the small animals and any direction from which danger might approach. Watch the tending of a nest. The adult is not the largest animal in the colony, and its nest is toward the inner edge of the semicircle, which places it further from the lake, and thus requiring more vigilance. It stands beside the nest in a slightly raised alert posture, head up, scanning the perimeter of the colony with the systematic attention of long practice. Every few minutes it drops its head and attends to the small animals at its feet, nosing them gently, repositioning one that has strayed a few inches too far from the nest, pulling a piece of vegetation across the nest's surface that had been displaced. The care is deliberate and unhurried, each motion considered, each small animal accounted for. There are perhaps 7 or 8 small animals at this nest. They move with a constant restless energy, investigating the ground around the nest with the thoroughness of creatures for whom the entire world is new and therefore requires immediate examination. They pick at the ground with their small beaks, testing every surface, occasionally bumping into each other and recoiling with the slight startled quality of something that has yet to learn the radius of its own body. They are very loud for their size. Every discovery, every collision, every new surface produces a sound, a high, thin peeping that clusters and overlaps until it is nearly continuous, and the adult responds to the collective sound with a low rumble that seems, to the small animals, to constitute reassurance, because the peeping briefly quietens when it comes. The evening light has found the nesting ground now, and is doing what evening light does with open, wet surfaces, making everything slightly more golden, slightly more precise, the shadows long and soft, the water in the shallows at the lake edge, a mirror of the sky above it. The adult that you have been watching turns its head, and for a moment, its eye is exactly aligned with yours across the open ground. The eye is deep brown and large, and has within it something you can only describe as attention. Not intelligence as you understand intelligence, but something that functions like attention, something that is genuinely directed and specifically focused, and that, for the duration of the moment the eye is on yours, makes you feel seen. Then the adult turns back to its nest and its young, and the moment dissolves, and you are once again the invisible observer at the edge of this ancient scene. You have been invisible here throughout your visit to the Jurassic, not through any special quality of yours, but simply because you are still and quiet and downwind, and these animals have no category for you, no evolutionary memory of your species, and so your presence does not compute as a threat or as prey or as anything in particular. You are simply part of the background, the way a tree or a boulder is part of the background. There is something both humbling and restful about being no particular thing to the world around you. The colony's evening vocalizations have increased in volume as the light fades. The calls go back and forth across the nesting ground with a density and overlap that suggests communication, or at least the social function that communication serves, the maintenance of contact, the assertion of presence, the calibration of position within the group. It is the sound of a community in the process of settling for the night, each individual exchanging the information that allows everyone to know where everyone else is, in the way that families call through houses in the evening, not because the information is critical, but because the exchange itself is the point. You can stay at the edge of the nesting ground as long as you like. The colony will continue its evening settling for some time. The adults will take turns at the nests through the night, the vigilance never entirely abandoned, but the rest distributed across enough individuals that no one carries it alone. The small animals will sleep, pressed against each other in the warmth of the nest, their tiny bodies generating a collective heat that sustains them through the cooler night. The lake will hold the reflections of the stars until the wind rises to disturb them, and then will hold them again when the wind drops. What you are watching is something very old. Not the specific species will not last forever. They never do. But the pattern, the colony nesting, the adults attending, the young learning the world's surfaces one at a time, the calls going back and forth across the evening air to maintain the web of contact and presence that is the social world. This pattern is older than the Jurassic. It will outlast it. In some form that you would not recognize as a nest or a colony or a call, this pattern will be present in the world that comes after this one, and the one after that, all the way forward to the world you came from, where the same ancient algorithms of care and contact and presence run in the nervous systems of creatures that have never heard of the Jurassic. The light is going now. The colony is settling. The calls are becoming less frequent, longer in their intervals, the evening winding down toward the night's long quiet tending of nests and young. Your eyes are heavy from the day's accumulated watching. Let them close. Let the sounds of the colony become the texture of the darkness behind your eyes. The small animals are already asleep, pressed warm against each other in their nest. The adult stands watch. The lake reflects the first stars. The Jurassic night, your third or your fifth or your 10th, you have lost count and it no longer matters, receives you once again. Imagine going deeper. Not into the earth, into the water. The Sundance Sea is warm and clear and not deep, and in the places where it is shallowest, the bottom is visible from above as a pale, rippled plain, with the occasional dark movement of a larger fish, or the slow traverse of something with a shell. You have been at its surface. You have watched it from the cliff. Now let your imagination carry you below it, into the water world that the surface conceals. The transition from air to water is gradual in imagination, not a plunge, but a descent, the light changing almost immediately as the water filters it, removing the reds and oranges first, so that within a few meters the world has a quality of blue and green that has no equivalent on land. The surface above you is still visible, a shimmering, moving ceiling of refracted light, the sun coming through it in shifting beams that illuminate the water in columns of gold before they diffuse and fade with depth. The temperature of the water is warm. This is a tropical, shallow sea, and the sun has been working on it for months, and the warmth is even, without the variation that land surfaces produce. You are the same temperature everywhere. The bottom is 8, 10, 12 meters below you, depending on where you are in the sea. On the bottom, a community of organisms has arranged itself in the patient, complex way of marine communities, corals that are not quite the corals of your era but serve the same structural function, building calcium carbonate frameworks that provide attachment surfaces and hiding places for hundreds of other species. Crinoids, animals that look so much like flowers that your era has always found them confusing, their stalked bodies anchored to the bottom and their feathery feeding arms spread toward the current are abundant here, covering the bottom in some places in dense fields that wave gently in the water's movement. Between the corals and the crinoids, the Jurassic sea floor is alive with smaller life. Bivalves, ancestors of the clams and mussels of your era, though not those species exactly lie half buried in the sand or attached to the coral structures, their shells opening slightly to filter the water for particles of food. Gastropods move slowly across the surfaces they inhabit, browsing the thin biological films that grow on every solid surface in the sea. In the crevices between coral heads, small fish hang motionless in the slight current, holding position with minimal fin movement, watching the water around them with the patient attention of ambush predators. The ammonites are everywhere, in the water column above the bottom, in the crevices of the coral, drifting slowly in the current, with their shells vertical and their tentacles trailing below them. These coiled cephalopods are among the most numerous visible animals in the Jurassic Sea. They move by jet propulsion, drawing water into the mantle cavity and expelling it to produce a slow, undulating motion through the water. They are the most common fossils of the Jurassic your era has found them, in their millions, in outcrops of limestone that were once this sea floor, and seeing them here, alive, reveals something their fossilized shells cannot: the softness of the animal inside, the delicate patterned skin, the complex eye that registers the water around it with an attention that is more alert than you might expect from something in a shell. There is a predator in the middle depths. The belemnite cephalopods that are more like squid than like ammonites, their internal shell concealed rather than external. Their bodies, torpedo-shaped and fast, are pursuing a school of small fish through the open water with the directed energy of animals that have spent their lives in open water. They move in a loose group, their bodies iridescent in the filtered light, changing colour as they communicate or react. Their 10 arms trailing behind them in a way that would look decorative if it were not also functional. The fish scatter. The belemnites pursue. The chase plays out in slow motion from your imagined vantage in the water, not slow because it is happening slowly, but slow because you are watching it from a place of stillness, and the action has that quality that all natural drama has, when witnessed from a distance, the quality of being absolutely inevitable even though you do not know how it will resolve. Let yourself float here. The water supports you completely in your imagining of this place. You weigh nothing. The water lifts and holds you with perfect equilibrium, so that you neither rise nor sink but simply exist in the middle depth, suspended between the surface ceiling and the floor below. This is what weightlessness feels like, not empty or cold, but supported. The pressure of the water equal in all directions. The body in a state of balance it never quite achieves on land. On land, your body always has a relationship with gravity that requires maintenance, posture, muscle tone, the constant low-level work of keeping yourself upright. Here there is no relationship to maintain, you simply are. The light from above is changing as afternoon becomes evening, the angle of the sun shifting, the quality of light coming through the water changing from the bright, directional beams of midday to a more diffuse, even illumination that comes from everywhere at once and casts no shadows. The sea floor in this light has a quality of perfect stillness, the corals and crinoids motionless, the small fish in the crevices unwavering, the slow drift of the ammonites barely perceptible. The whole underwater world is, in this evening light, something like what you imagine perfect rest would look like. Everything in its place, everything exactly in equilibrium, nothing more and nothing less than what it is. There is an ichthyosaur somewhere to your left. You can see it at the edge of visibility, a large animal, perhaps 5 meters long, its body shaped like a fish in the convergent way that fast swimmers always become fish-shaped regardless of their ancestry. It moves through the water with the effortless, undulating ease of an animal designed for this medium, its tail sweeping in powerful vertical beats, its streamlined body slipping through the water with almost no resistance. It is going somewhere, or it is going nowhere in particular, and in the blue and green light of the Jurassic Sea the distinction does not seem important. It is simply moving the way everything in water moves, not because it must, but because motion and the sea are the same thing. The seafloor community continues its operations below you. A small fish investigates a hole in a coral head, retreating quickly as something inside shifts. A gastropod has found a dead ammonite and is beginning the slow work of processing it. A crinoid has caught something in its feeding arms and is conveying it to the small mouth at the center of the crown. These are not events. They are the continuous operations of a system. Each action, the same action that has been performed in this place every day for thousands of years, each individual animal doing what its kind has always done, the whole producing a stability that looks, from a distance, like permanence. Permit yourself the luxury of not understanding all of it. The sea is more complex than any single observer can contain. The number of species here, the number of relationships between them, the number of simultaneous chemical and biological processes occurring in every cubic meter of water, these are beyond comprehension, deliberately so. The sea does not simplify itself for observers. It simply is what it is, in its full complexity, and what you can receive of it, from your floating position in the middle depth, is enough. The water is very quiet around you. There are sounds in the sea, the clicking and grinding sounds of marine organisms, the occasional low-frequency pulse of a large animal moving through the water, the constant background crackle of biological activity that you can feel as much as hear. But they are all underwater sounds, delivered through the water directly to your body rather than through the air to your ears, and the experience of underwater sound is different from the experience of air sound. It is more intimate, more internal. It arrives inside you rather than at you. Let your breathing slow. In your imagination of the sea, you breathe the water like air. It is that kind of imagining, the kind that gives you the ability to be where you are without the limitations of your actual body. Your breath is slow and even. Each inhale draws in the blue-green water, and each exhale releases it in a stream of silver bubbles that rise slowly toward the shimmering ceiling above you. The bubbles rise. You watch them. They reach the surface and dissolve into the air above and are gone, and new ones follow them, rising and dissolving, patient and certain as the breath itself. The ichthyosaur has moved on. The belemnites have taken their chase elsewhere. The crinoids wave in the current. The ammonites drift. The seafloor community continues its operations in the deepening evening light, and you float here, in the warm water of the Jurassic Sea, in the perfect equilibrium of a body that is held rather than holding, attended to rather than attending, received rather than reaching. This is what the sea offers, in every era it has existed: the complete suspension of effort, the absolute support of weight, the permission to simply be inside something much larger than yourself. There is a plateau to the west of the forest basin, reached by climbing the young mountains that are just beginning to rise from the collision of crustal plates, that will, in 150 million years, produce the Rocky Mountains. The climbing is not difficult. The mountains here are not yet the dramatic heights they will eventually become, their slopes still relatively gentle, their ridges rounded rather than sharp. You have climbed through the forest, then through a zone of sparser, shorter trees, then across open slopes of low vegetation and exposed rock, and now you are on the plateau itself, a broad, flat-topped area of limestone and thin soil, perhaps 2,000 meters above the sea, where the air is cooler and thinner and the sky is enormous. It is midnight. This is the hour you choose for the plateau, because midnight on a high plateau in a dark world with no atmospheric light pollution is one of the most extraordinary visual experiences available to any creature with eyes. The Milky Way, the galactic plane, is not just visible but dominant, a dense, luminous band that crosses the entire sky from one horizon to the other, so bright that it casts a faint, diffused shadow from objects on the plateau surface. You are standing in a shadow cast by starlight. Look up slowly. Give your eyes time to adjust. They have been adjusting all evening. But the plateau is darker than the forest. The darkness more complete without the canopy to provide any sense of enclosure, and the full depth of the sky requires a longer adjustment than you have yet given it. Start with the horizon and move your gaze gradually upward. The stars near the horizon are the most numerous and the most densely packed. This is an optical effect. The stars of the galaxy crowded toward the plane of the disk that you are looking along from the inside. Moving upward, the density changes, and by the time your gaze reaches the zenith, the point directly above your head, you are looking up through the thickness of the galaxy's disk into the deeper dark beyond it. The stars are not all the same. You can see this without any optical aid, because the star colors are subtle but real. The warm orange-red of old giant stars at the ends of their main sequence lives, the blue-white of young hot stars just beginning their work, the yellower mid-tones of stars like your own sun. The sky has always had this color variation, though in your era it takes effort to see it through the light and atmospheric pollution. Here, lying on your back on the limestone plateau in the Jurassic midnight, the colors are simply there, available to any attending eye. Feel the limestone under your back. At this altitude and in this hour, the rock has given back the warmth it collected during the day and is now slightly cooler than the air, cool but not cold, a smooth, solid surface that is the most ancient thing you have been in contact with in all your time here. The limestone beneath this plateau was laid down in an earlier sea, one that covered this land long before the Jurassic, in the depths of the Carboniferous or earlier, built from the compressed bodies of marine organisms over millions of years. When you lie on this rock, you are lying on something that was alive a very long time ago, in a form so different from life as you understand it, that the connection requires some effort to hold. And yet the connection is real. The plateau is not entirely without life. Even here, at 2,000 meters, in the midnight of a world without artificial warmth, things are happening. Small insects adapted to the high-altitude cold move through the short vegetation around you, going about their business in the dark with a confidence that requires no light. A small mammal precursor, one of the warm-blooded, mostly nocturnal creatures that are beginning, in this era, to develop the metabolic and neurological capacities that will eventually produce all of mammalian life, including yours, is somewhere nearby in the rocks, hunting the insects with quiet, quick competence. You cannot see it. You can sometimes hear it, a very small sound in the rocks that has a quickness and decision that separates it from the sounds of things moving in wind. The quiet up here is different from the quiet of the forest. In the forest, quiet is always relative, always measured against the insect chorus and the sounds of the river and the occasional movements of large animals. Here, the quiet is more absolute. The wind is the main sound, not a strong wind, barely enough to feel on your skin, but enough to make a gentle sigh through the low vegetation, and across the edge of the plateau and beyond the wind, there is almost nothing. The distance from the forest and the sea means that none of those sounds reach here. The distance from the sky means that even the atmosphere seems thinner, the sounds you do make seeming to dissolve more quickly into it. This is the kind of quiet that your nervous system was designed for in the deep evolutionary past. Not the artificial quiet of a soundproofed room, or the numbing quiet of enclosed spaces, but the natural quiet of open high ground in a dark night, where the sounds that are present are the sounds of wind and small animals and your own breathing, and the silence between them is not empty but full of the texture of the night air and the weight of the sky, and the particular quality of an undisturbed world going about its business without you. Your breathing is very slow now. You have not been trying to slow it. It has slowed on its own, following the logic of altitude and cool air and horizontal position, and the long, accumulating relaxation of the day. Each breath is deeper than it was an hour ago, requiring more of the lung, drawing more fully on the slightly thinner air of the plateau. The slight additional effort of breathing at altitude has a paradoxical effect. It makes breathing more conscious, more felt, and in becoming more conscious, it becomes something you can attend to with the same quality of attention you have been giving to the river and the sea and the nesting colony. Your own breath as a thing worth watching. Your own chest as something that rises and falls with the same patient rhythm as everything else in this night. The stars are moving, very slowly, imperceptibly in any single moment, but if you watch the same point in the sky over the span of an hour, you will see the rotation of the earth expressed in the drift of the stellar canopy above you. The stars near the celestial pole, the point around which all others appear to revolve, move in tight circles, barely leaving their position. The stars near the horizon drift most visibly, rising in the east and setting in the west with the same certainty as the sun, on the same schedule, following the same ancient logic. The sky is not static. The sky is one of the most consistently moving things in existence. The stars are not fixed points of light, but moving fires, and the whole thing is in motion, and you can see the motion if you are patient enough and the night is dark enough, and the air between you and the stars is clean enough. What is it to be this small under this sky? Your era has an ambivalent relationship with the question of human smallness in a vast universe, sometimes taking comfort in it, sometimes finding it disturbing, sometimes refusing to look at it directly. In the Jurassic midnight, the question is moot. You are exactly as small as you are, under a sky exactly as large as it is, and the relationship between these two facts is simply what it is, a relationship, not a verdict. The sky does not diminish you by being large. You do not diminish the sky by being small. You are both fully what you are, at the same moment, on the same night, in the same world. Let this thought go. Let the sky keep moving, and let your thoughts stop moving with it. You have been thinking, more or less continuously, since you arrived in the Jurassic, observing and responding and forming small understandings about this world and your place within it. This has been good and right. But thinking is also a form of effort, and the plateau at midnight does not require any effort from you. It only requires presence. Presence without agenda. Presence without the narrative of self that your mind normally maintains. The small mammal precursor in the rocks has moved close enough for you to hear it more clearly now. A series of quick, small sounds, confident and unhurried, the sounds of a creature that owns this night in a way that its daytime counterparts do not. It is doing well, this little animal. Better than most of its contemporaries. Something in its lineage is working. Some combination of warm blood and complex brain and nocturnal habit that will, in time, in so much time, that the number required to describe it is meaningless, produce every warm-blooded creature that ever lives. It does not know this. It is simply hunting insects on a high plateau at midnight, very successfully, and the success is complete in itself. Close your eyes now. The stars will be there when you open them, or they will have moved, and either way the night will continue. Your body is warm against the cool limestone. Your breathing is deep and slow and certain. The wind moves across you very gently. The touch of it on your face, the lightest possible reminder that you are still here, still in the world, still inside this beautiful and ancient and patient night. The plateau receives you as it receives everything that comes to rest on it, without comment, without ceremony, with the simple hospitality of something that has been offering this surface to the sky for longer than anything else you can reach. You are coming back down. From the plateau, from the stars, from the midnight cool of 2,000 meters back down through the zones of decreasing altitude, the vegetation thickening around you as you descend, the temperature rising degree by degree, the air becoming richer and warmer and more scented with each 100 meters of descent. The forest comes back around you gradually, the trees first scattered and then clustered and then continuous. And the sound comes back with it, the insects, the water, the constant soft commentary of a living world at night. You have found the river again. Not the same bend where you spent your first night. The river has taken you to a different section of its length, a wider place where it slows and braids across a gravel bed into several shallow channels before rejoining into a single flow. The water here is shin deep in the shallowest channels and thigh deep in the main one, and in the moonlight the moon has risen since you were on the plateau, 3/4 full and brilliant above the trees. The braided channels are each a separate line of silver light on the dark gravel. You are not going to cross. The braided section is appealing precisely because it does not demand crossing it, is simply there, laid out before you in the moonlight, doing what braided rivers do, which is to slow the water and spread it and let it pause in its descent before gathering again for the next push downstream. Sit on the bank. Let your feet rest near the water without entering it. The sound of the braided section is different from the single-channel sound of the river above and below, more complex, more various. The multiple channels each producing their own tones, and the tones overlapping and interweaving in a way that is almost musical in the literal sense, in the way that the word music should probably mean any organized sound that moves through time, with a logic that your body can follow, even if your mind cannot explain it. The moon makes a different world. The colors are gone. Moonlight reduces the landscape to a palette of silver and grey and black. The deep colour of the wet gravel, the pale light of the water surface, the grey-green of the cycad leaves that overhang the bank, the black of the tree trunks. Your own hands, resting on your knees as you sit, are pale and slightly luminous in the moonlight, and they look briefly unfamiliar before you recognise them as yours. The moon does this, makes the familiar strange, makes the ordinary beautiful in its strangeness, removes the comfortable colours of daylight that allow you to feel you know what everything is. The Jurassic moon is slightly larger than the moon of your era, slightly closer to the Earth. The moon's long, gradual recession, not yet as advanced as it will be in your time. The difference is not dramatic, would not be obvious to anyone not specifically looking for it, but the tides it produces are somewhat larger, the tidal forces on the Earth somewhat stronger, and the nights when the moon is full are somewhat brighter. The moon's face is the same face it will always show the Earth tidally locked since the very early history of the solar system, always presenting the same hemisphere to its planet. The patterns on that face are the same patterns your era knows. The same craters, the same dark maria, the same arrangement of ancient geological features. The moon does not change on human timescales. It barely changes on dinosaur timescales. You are seeing tonight what the sauropods see when they walk to the river by moonlight, what the Allosaurus sees when it moves through the forest in the dark, what the pterosaurs see when they make the occasional nocturnal flight along the coast. The same moon, the same face. A small theropod comes to the water's edge across the main channel from where you sit. You can see it in the moonlight, a delicate animal, perhaps 1/2 meter tall at the hip, its body slim and quick-moving in the way of small predators. It approaches the water cautiously, pausing every few steps to survey its surroundings, its head moving in quick, precise arcs that cover a full circle of the immediate environment before it moves forward again. It reaches the water's edge and lowers its head to drink very quickly, just a few rapid pulses of the throat, then raises its head again, watching, then drinks again. The vigilance of a small animal in a world full of larger ones is an unceasing practice, never fully suspended, even at a simple need like drinking. You hold very still. The animal is perhaps 20 meters away and the moonlight is bright enough that if it looked directly at you it might see you, but your stillness removes you from its threat category. Moving things are potential dangers, still things are part of the landscape. It drinks once more, then turns and moves back into the tree line with the quick, decisive movement of an animal that has gotten what it came for and has no reason to linger in an exposed position. The river runs on. The moonlight runs on. The night is not disturbed by this small event. It was simply something that happened, an animal drinking in the night beside a river that has been providing this service since before this animal's lineage diverged from whatever preceded it. How many animals have come to this river tonight? You have seen only a few, the sauropod on that first night, this small theropod now, but the river is a long thing, and along its length, in the hours of darkness, many animals have approached its bank and drunk from it and departed again. The river does not record them. It does not remember the prints they leave, which will be washed or dried into illegibility before the next night. Only the rare ones, sinking into the right kind of sediment at the right rate of burial in the right chemical conditions, will be preserved, and then only the hardest parts, the bones and teeth, not the softness of the animal that made the print, not the moonlight it stood in, not the sound of the water it drank. The fossil record is the most extraordinary archive in the world and the most impoverished one, and what it preserves is so much less than what was. This thought does not need to be sad. What was completely. The sauropod that drank at this river bend on the night you arrived was completely there, completely present, completely alive, completely itself in that moment. The fact that it has left almost no record does not diminish what it was when it was. The presence of a thing is not made more real by its being preserved. It is already completely real, in the moment that it is. Your own presence here, tonight, in this moonlit braided section of the Jurassic River, this is also completely real, in whatever sense real applies to an act of imagination that borrows the physics of a world and the consciousness of a visitor. You are as real as you are capable of being, in this moment, sitting on this bank, hearing this river. Let it be enough. It is enough. It has always been enough. The moonlight is moving the shadows. The trees on the west bank cast their shadows long across the water and the gravel, and as the moon continues its transit of the sky, the shadows shift slowly, in the way of all celestial motion, imperceptibly from moment to moment, but visibly over the span of an hour. Time is written in shadows. The shadow of a large cycad on the far bank has moved perhaps the width of your hand since you sat down. This is how long you have been here. A hand's width of shadow on a moonlit riverbank. Your eyes are doing something. They are doing what eyes do when the body has been awake longer than it wishes, finding the distances they would focus at, and then releasing that focus. The scene before you becoming slightly softer, the individual elements of the river and the far bank, and the moonlit trees, losing their sharpness and blending slightly into each other. This is not a failure of attention. It is a natural adjustment, the visual system reducing its processing load in preparation for what it knows is coming. You can let it happen. The river will continue to be the river regardless of whether you are seeing it in sharp focus or in the gentle blur of impending sleep. The river runs, the moonlight falls, the forest breathes around you, and the sauropods are somewhere in it, sleeping or drifting through the night on their slow, purposeful rounds. The Allosaurus is somewhere, patient and awake. The small mammal precursor is somewhere on the high ground above the forest, hunting. The nesting colony is quiet, the adults at their night watch, the young animals warm in their nests. The pterosaurs are roosting on the sea cliffs, hanging from their feet in the darkness. The Sundance Sea is moving its warm water in its slow patterns, the ammonites drifting, the ichthyosaur moving through the depths. All of it is happening, right now, in this moment, in this world that is completely itself and asking nothing of you except your willingness to be inside it. Follow the river in your imagination for a while. Follow it downstream around the bend you can see from here, past the section where the gravel gives way to silt and the banks soften and the trees lean further over the water and their roots trail in it. Follow it down to where it braids again and then rejoins, and then enters the coastal plain and slows further and becomes wide and brown and opaque with the sediment it carries. Follow it to where it meets the sea, the warm entry of fresh water into the salt, the place where two worlds mix and everything is different from what it was upstream and what it will be further out. This is where the river has been going all along. This is where everything in the river goes. Let the river take your thoughts there, and let your thoughts dissolve there into the warm receiving sea. There is a kind of rest that is available when you understand where you are in time. Not the ordinary understanding, not the knowing of the date and the year and the era, but the deeper understanding, the kind that requires you to genuinely hold the numbers that describe geological time and feel them, not just think them. 150 million years. The number is larger than imagination, and that is the point. When you try to feel 150 million years and cannot quite do it, what you experience is the boundary of your own comprehension. And at that boundary, something relaxes. The part of your mind that normally holds you oriented in your own timeline lets go for a moment, because the timeline has become too vast to hold. You are lying in the forest again. Not in the root alcove. You have found a new spot, a section of the forest floor where a large tree fell decades ago, and the gap it left in the canopy has not yet been closed by the growth of younger trees. There is a rectangle of sky visible above you, perhaps 3 meters by 5, and through it you can see the deep Jurassic night, the stars brilliant, the Milky Way crossing the gap in the canopy at a diagonal, so that its densest section passes directly overhead. You are looking up through a window in the canopy at the most ancient thing you can see. The tree that fell is beside you, its trunk, enormous even in death, is to your right, its bark beginning the long process of returning to soil. Already it has been colonized by mosses and fungi that work at its surface with patient chemical tools, breaking the bonds that held its cellulose together, releasing the carbon that the tree spent a century accumulating from the air. Within a decade, the log will be soft enough that your hand would sink into it. Within a century, it will be a slight hummock in the forest floor. Within 1,000 years, it will be part of the ground itself, undistinguishable from the material around it. This is the log's future. For now, it is simply there beside you, solid and real and slightly warm from the microbiological activity within it, the warmth of decomposition that is the warmth of life working on the formerly living. Think about the span of the Jurassic. 56 million years, more than twice the span from the extinction of the last non-avian dinosaurs to the present day. Long enough that the beginning of the Jurassic, if you could visit it, would be as alien to this evening as this evening is to your own time. The life of the early Jurassic is different from the life of the middle Jurassic you are inside now. Different species, different proportions of types, different vegetation, different climate in some regions. The Jurassic is not a single moment. It is a long, slow, changing sequence of moments, each one growing from the one before it, each one preparing the conditions for the one that follows, the whole spanning a duration that your imagination can approach but not quite hold. And before the Jurassic, the Triassic, during which the dinosaurs first emerged into a world recovering from the most severe extinction in the history of complex life. And before the Triassic, the Permian, when the reptile lineages that would produce the dinosaurs were first diversifying. And before the Permian, 300 million years of increasingly complex life before that, going back through the Carboniferous forests and the Devonian fish and the Silurian coral reefs and the Ordovician seas and the Cambrian explosion and the long Precambrian eons when life on Earth was mostly microbial, tiny and chemical and invisible, but doing the invisible work of producing the atmospheric oxygen that everything after it required. All of this. The whole 4 billion year history of life on this planet, every generation of every organism in every era, all of them connected to each other through the unbroken thread of cellular inheritance that runs from the very first replicating molecule in the very first sea to the organism you are right now, lying on the forest floor of the Jurassic, looking up at the stars. You are connected to this forest not metaphorically but literally through the chemistry of your cells, through the molecular machinery that your cells use to produce energy and copy their own instructions, through the fundamental biological processes that you share with the tree beside you, and the insects in the bark and the small mammal precursor somewhere in the rocks on the plateau above, and even, distantly, with the ammonites drifting in the Sundance Sea. This connection is not a source of pressure. It does not require anything of you. It is simply true, the way the stars are true, existing independently of whether you understand or acknowledge or respond to it. You are part of the living world. You have always been part of the living world. You will remain part of the living world in various forms for longer than any individual life can contemplate. The atoms that constitute you right now have been part of other living things before you and will be part of other living things after you, and the forms they take in between will not be continuous with your own consciousness, but the matter itself will continue, the carbon and hydrogen and nitrogen cycling through the biosphere as they always have. Is this frightening or comforting? Your era cannot quite decide. 1. The impermanence of individual identity is one of the things your kind has been working through for as long as it has been able to form the question, and no era has resolved it to everyone's satisfaction. But in the Jurassic night, with the stars overhead and the forest floor beneath you and the log beside you dissolving slowly back into the ground, the question has a different quality than it has in the abstract. Here, impermanence is not an idea. It is the primary texture of everything around you. The trees are impermanent. The river is impermanent. The sauropods that walked to the river this morning will be bones in the rock within 10,000 years of tonight. And the rock itself will be different rock in 100 million years, and the whole landscape will be unrecognizable in the time it takes the universe to get from this moment to the one you came from. And within all this impermanence, tonight exists. This particular night, with this particular arrangement of stars, through this particular gap in this particular canopy, with this log beside you, and this moss under you, and this temperature of air on your face, this is happening right now. In the full sense of right now, it is as present and as real as anything has ever been. The present is always perfectly real. It is the only time that is completely present. The past is a reconstruction, and the future is a projection, and now is where everything actually occurs, always, in every era. Let your mind go quiet now. It has been a journey through the Jurassic, through the forests and the floodplains and the valley and the coast and the sea and the cliffs and the nesting ground and the plateau and the river at moonlight, and this last, open window in the canopy. You have seen what this world offers and received what it gives, which is more than you could have listed in advance and more than you can fully hold in memory now. That is all right. The experience does not require comprehensive retention. It only requires complete presence while it is occurring, and you have been present as completely as you have been able to be. The stars are moving very slightly through the window in the canopy. The Milky Way's diagonal crossing of the gap is imperceptibly different from what it was when you lay down. The Earth is turning under you, slowly and certainly, and the stars are not moving, but you are moving relative to them. And the feeling of this lying still while the planet turns, the stars drifting overhead with their ancient patience, is the feeling of being inside something much larger than yourself and being at rest inside it. This is the feeling the Jurassic has been offering you all along. The world is large and old and moving, and you are small and brief and still, and the relationship between these things is not a tragedy. It is simply the shape of existence. Your breathing is very slow. Your body is completely relaxed against the forest floor. The log is solid to your right. The sky is above you. The forest is all around. The night is complete. There is nothing more to know, and nothing more to do, and nowhere further to go. You are exactly here, in exactly this moment, in exactly this world, and it is exactly enough. The last question of the Jurassic night, not a question that requires an answer, but the kind that opens a door you walk through by closing your eyes. What does it feel like to be held by time itself? Not carried forward by it, not measured by it, but held the way the river holds everything that flows through it, the way the forest holds everything that rests within it, the way the night holds everything that sleeps inside it. What does it feel like to be held by time, the way the Jurassic holds tonight? Like this. It feels exactly like this. Warm ground, dark sky, the sound of something living and continuous. Your own breathing, slow and deep and sure. The certain knowledge that the world is very old and very patient, and has never once, in all of its history, failed to provide a place to rest for the things that needed resting. You are one of those things. The world has provided your place. The Jurassic holds you now, as it holds everything that ever slept within it, in the long dark before the morning that always comes. To understand the Jurassic, you need to understand what it inherited. Every world inherits from the world before it. Every era is shaped as much by the extinctions that preceded it as by the life that survived them. The Jurassic inherited from the Triassic, and the Triassic handed it something more complex than simply a roster of surviving species. It handed it a world of open space, of empty niches, of ecological room to move into, and into that room the dinosaurs had already begun moving when the Jurassic opened. The end of the Triassic was one of the 5 great mass extinction events in the history of complex life on Earth. Something happened, not a single something, but a coincidence or cascade of somethings that combined into an extinction-level event. Volcanic activity on an enormous scale, as the supercontinent Pangaea began its long fracturing process, released carbon dioxide and sulfur dioxide for hundreds of thousands of years, altering the climate and the chemistry of the oceans in ways that many life forms could not adapt to quickly enough. The seas became more acidic, killing the carbonate-shelled organisms that had dominated marine communities. The land temperatures shifted. The vegetation zones moved. And the animals that depended on the old vegetation zones, the old marine conditions, the old climatic stability, did not make it through. What survived was partly a matter of chance and partly a matter of physiology. The dinosaurs had several physiological advantages that appear to have helped them through the extinction event their respiratory systems, which were already more efficient than those of many contemporary animals, allowed them to function in atmospheres altered by volcanic gases. Their metabolic flexibility allowed them to tolerate greater temperature variation. Their generalist feeding options, most early dinosaurs were not highly specialized feeders, allowed them to survive when specific food sources were depleted. And their reproductive strategy eggs, buried or sheltered, which could weather conditions that exposed young of other reproductive strategies, could not provide resilience. When the Triassic ended and the Jurassic began, the world that opened up was not the world the dinosaurs had been born into. It was emptier. Many of their early competitors, the large cruritarsal archosaurs, the rhynchosaurs, the dicynodonts, many of the early mammal relatives were gone. The niches they had occupied were available. The resources they had consumed were unclaimed. The ecological space that the extinction had created was, for the animals that survived, an enormous opportunity, and the dinosaurs moved into it with the quiet persistence of life filling whatever space is offered to it. The forest you are lying in tonight was planted, in the most indirect but real sense, by the survivors of the end-Triassic extinction. The tree above you, this enormous Araucarian conifer, is the descendant of a lineage that made it through the extinction, while other plant families did not. The sauropods that drink at the river every morning are the descendants of early prosauropods that emerged from the Triassic into the Jurassic opportunity, and diversified there into the extraordinary variety of long-necked giants that characterize the Middle Jurassic fauna. The Allosaurus is the descendant of the small, fast, bipedal carnivores that survived the Triassic transition and, over 50 million years of evolution, grew into the apex position its lineage now occupies. Everything here is a survivor. Not in the dramatic sense of survival, not clutching at a ledge, not fighting its way through, but in the quiet, biological sense of a lineage that continued when others stopped. Survival in the geological record is almost never dramatic. It is almost always invisible. You cannot look at a living animal and see the extinction events its lineage survived. You can only know about them from the fossil record, which shows you the before and the after, and leaves you to infer from the comparison something about the during. The during was experienced by the animals themselves, but they left no account of it that you can read. Here is what the during of the Triassic-Jurassic transition might have felt like. If felt is even the right word for what the organisms of that time experienced. Things that had been abundant were less abundant. Things that had been available were less available. The world was changed in ways that some lineages could navigate and others could not. The ones that could navigate it did not experience their own survival as a gift or an achievement. They experienced it, to whatever degree they experienced anything, as the continuation of daily life, finding food, avoiding threats, finding mates, producing offspring, doing the things that living things do. Their survival was the byproduct of a set of characteristics that happened to fit the changed world. Your own lineage was there, not as anything you would recognize a small, nocturnal, generalist mammal precursor, warm-blooded and quick, hiding in the dark from the larger animals that dominated the day. Your ancestors survived the Triassic-Jurassic transition the same way you are surviving tonight in the Jurassic forest, by being small and warm and quick, and by using the darkness that the larger, less thermally robust animals of the era could not fully occupy. The night belonged to your ancestors. It has always, in some sense, belonged to your lineage. There is a version of deep time that is vertiginous, that makes you feel small in a way that is distressing, the scale of time too large for comfort, the impermanence of individual life too stark to sit with. And there is another version that is simply vast, that makes you feel small in the way that lying under a clear sky makes you feel small, the scale of what surrounds you so complete and so beautiful that smallness becomes the correct response, the proportionate response, the response that is in keeping with what is true. The Jurassic invites the second version. There is no demand here that you be larger than you are. The world is already large enough for both of you. The log beside you is warm in the way of biological activity, the warmth of fungi and bacteria working within it, producing the heat of chemical reactions the way your own body produces heat, the same fundamental process of oxidation at different speeds in different contexts. The log is alive in this sense. The moss on your body is alive. The air in your lungs is alive, in the sense that it carries within it the oxygen that other living things have been producing and releasing for the entire history of photosynthetic life on Earth. Life is everywhere around you, not in the overdramatic sense of every surface teeming, but in the quieter, more complete sense of everything, being part of the same cycling of matter and energy that constitutes the living world. You have been inside that cycling tonight. You have eaten and breathed and been warm, and your cells have been doing their ancient work of maintaining the particular improbable order that constitutes a living body, and all of this has happened at the same time that the forest has been doing its own version of the same work, and the river has been doing its version, and the Sauropods and the Allosaurus and the pterosaurs and the ammonites have been doing theirs. All of it simultaneous, all of it connected, all of it the one living world doing what it has always done. The stars above the gap in the canopy have moved since you last looked. The Milky Way's diagonal crossing of the opening has shifted. The dense band of stars tilted slightly from where it was. The Earth has continued turning, the same Earth that was turning through the Triassic, and will be turning through every era that follows the Jurassic, and the turning produces this gentle drift of the sky that is the most reliable movement in the observable world, reliable enough to be used as a clock, reliable enough to navigate by, reliable enough to sleep under with the knowledge that when you wake, it will have completed its circle, and the same stars will be more or less where they were. The coolest part of the Jurassic night is now. The hours before dawn are the coldest in every climate that has a night, because the night is when the Earth releases the heat it collected from the day's sun, and the pre-dawn hours are when it has been releasing that heat the longest. The cooling is small here. This is a warm, tropical world, and even the coolest pre-dawn is warm by the standards of a temperate climate. But the change is perceptible as a slight freshening of the air, a slight sharpening of the night smells, a faint increase in the sound of the insects which, like many invertebrates, become more active in the transitional temperatures that bracket the darkest hours. This coolness is what your body reads as the signal for deepest sleep. The drop in ambient temperature that accompanies the pre-dawn hours is a signal that evolution has built your sleep architecture around the body's own temperature drops in response. The metabolism slows, the brain waves shift into their slowest and most restorative patterns. The Jurassic is producing the same signal for you that your own bedroom does on a cool night, that any sleeping place in any era produces for the creatures that rest in it. The signal is ancient, and your response to it is ancient, and the result is the same as it has always been, a deepening, a going further in. Let yourself go further in. The Triassic left you this world. The world is giving you this night. The night is offering you this last depth of rest before whatever follows it. You do not need to know what follows it. You only need to go where the night is taking you, which is the same direction it always takes you, downward, inward, away from the surface of the waking world, and into the warm dark of your own deepest rest. The Jurassic will be here, the morning will come. The world does not need you awake to continue being the world. There is an entire world at ankle height that you have been moving through without fully attending to. The large animals, the sauropods, the Allosaurus, the Stegosaurs occupy the visual field readily. They are too large to miss. But the Jurassic world is not mostly large animals. It is mostly small ones, as every era is mostly small ones, and the small lives of the Jurassic understory and the Jurassic leaf litter and the Jurassic bark and soil are as various and complex and complete as the large lives that the fossil record has made famous. The cycad grove is behind the place where you have been resting most of this night. You found it yesterday, in the mid-morning, following the line of a small tributary stream that ran through the forest floor, and you sat in it for an hour that you did not count, watching the light through the cycad fronds and listening to what lived there. Cycads are among the most ancient seed plants. They were already old when the dinosaurs arrived, their basic design so functional and so durable that it has required almost no alteration in hundreds of millions of years. The ones in this grove are each perhaps 2 meters tall, Their crowns of long, feather-like leaves spreading outward from the central stem in a horizontal wheel, catching the diffuse light that filters down to the understory level. In the cycad grove, the small lives are most visible. The fronds provide attachment surfaces and shade and microhabitats at half a dozen different heights and exposures. Some insects live only in the living frond, feeding on the tissue. Others live in the folded bases of the fronds, where accumulated organic material and moisture create a habitat distinct from any other surface in the grove. Others live under the shed fronds on the ground, in the dark, moist world between the dead vegetation and the soil. Others live in the soil itself, a world so various and dense with life that a handful of it contains more individual organisms than a large city contains people. Watch the surface of a cycad frond from close up. You are lying in the grove now, your head turned to the side so that a single frond is at eye level, perhaps 30 centimeters in front of your face. The frond surface is not smooth. It is covered in a very fine texture of microscopic structures that are visible in the morning light as a slight sheen. And moving across this surface, so slowly that you must hold your gaze still to detect the movement, are several very small animals. Mites, possibly, or something in the same ecological position as mites, filling the same niche of very small predator of even smaller organisms that mites will fill in your era. They are almost too small to see without assistance, but the light is right, and your eyes are rested, and you can see them, tiny moving points that cross the frond surface, with a slowness that makes the frond seem like a continent. At the base of the cycad's stem, in the accumulated organic material that gathers there, a small beetle is working. Not the large bronze beetle from your first evening, a smaller one, dark and rounded, using its front legs to manipulate a piece of organic material far larger than its body, pulling it toward an opening in the organic mat that leads to wherever it is taking the material. The beetle is not hurrying. It is applying constant, steady force to its task, repositioning when the material snags on something, finding a new angle, pulling again. The task is simple, and the performance of it is complete, and the beetle is entirely inside its task in the way that only creatures with limited cognitive apparatus can be without self-consciousness, without alternative, without the awareness of other possible activities that would dilute the attention. There is a small lizard on the near side of the stem, watching the beetle. It is very still, still in the particular way of ambush predators, the stillness that is not rest, but the most active possible deployment of patience. Its eye is enormous relative to its small head, and it is fixed on the beetle with an intensity that you can feel even from your position a meter away, an intensity that is all concentrated attention, all directed toward the small moving thing that represents food. It has been still for longer than you have been watching it. It will remain still, probably, for longer after you stop watching it. This is what a lizard's morning looks like. Long periods of absolute stillness punctuated by the occasional explosive movement that is over before you quite register it. There are flowers here. Or what pass for flowers in this era, the reproductive structures of the cycads are not flowers in the angiospermic sense, not the petaled, nectar-producing structures that will revolutionize the plant world in the next geological period and produce the extraordinary diversity of flowering plants that dominates your own era's vegetation. But they are coloured and they are scented and they attract insects that carry pollen from one plant to another, and in their function they prefigure the flower even if their form is different. The cone-like structures at the crown of the nearest cycad are a deep rust orange, warm-coloured and slightly waxy-looking, and they carry a faint, sweet smell that competes pleasantly with the general organic richness of the grove. A flying insect finds the cone. Not a bees are not yet, but something in the same ecological position. A large fly with a thick furred body that its era has independently developed to collect pollen, carrying it in the same way and to the same functional end that bees will carry it in the era to come. The fly moves across the surface of the cone with the same absorbed efficiency as the beetle, transferring pollen onto its body surfaces without attending to the transfer, attending only to the immediate task of collecting the food it came for. When it leaves, it will carry pollen to another cycad, and the cycad will benefit, and the fly will have done its inadvertent work of cross-pollination that makes the cycad grove possible as a diverse, healthy community rather than a collection of isolated, inbreeding individuals. Every relationship in the grove is like this. Not cooperative in the conscious sense, none of these animals has chosen to participate in a relationship with the others, but functional, the way the individual operations of a complex system are functional, each element doing its own thing in a way that meshes, without intention, with what all the other elements are doing. The cycads provide structure and food. The insects exploit both, and in doing so pollinate and process organic material. The lizards exploit the insects. The small insectivorous dinosaurs exploit the lizards. The decomposers on the forest floor exploit everything that dies. Each exploitation enables the next, the whole cycling upward and downward through the living system without a director and without a plan, producing a stability that looks, from outside the system, like design. The warmth in the grove is different from the warmth of the open forest. The cycad crowns trap air and warm it, creating a microclimate several degrees warmer than the surrounding forest, and in this warmth the insect activity is higher, and the lizard activity is more continuous, and even the soil organisms are metabolizing slightly faster, the chemical reactions that constitute their life proceeding at the higher rate that warmth permits. The grove is a warmer world within the world, and the animals that live in it are adapted to this warmth and depend on it and shape their daily patterns around it. You have been in the grove since before dawn. The light came gradually first, the barest lightning of the sky visible through the cycad fronds, then the pale gold of pre-dawn filtering through the canopy above the grove, then the full morning light distributed through the fronds into the warm, dappled illumination that you are inside now. During this transition, the grove's animals have shifted from their night behavior to their day behavior, the nocturnal lizards retreating to their shelters, the diurnal ones emerging, the night insects going quiet, the day insects beginning their sound, the whole community, performing the transition it performs every morning with the same unhurried competence that it performs every other regular operation. Your body is comfortable in the grove. The ground here is deep with accumulated cycad frond material, dry enough not to be wet, soft enough to yield to your weight, thick enough to insulate you from the temperature of the soil below. You have been lying here for long enough that your body heat has warmed the layer of material directly beneath you, creating a pocket of warmth that matches your own temperature so precisely that you can no longer distinguish the boundary between your body and the ground. This is the particular comfort of being well rested in a warm, sheltered place. The dissolution of the boundary between self and environment, the body finding its equilibrium with the world around it and settling into it so completely that the distinction stops mattering. The small beetle has finished its task and has retreated into the organic mat at the base of the cycad. The lizard, which did not get the beetle after all, has moved a few centimetres along the stem in search of a better vantage. The fly has gone to another cycad, or into the air, or wherever flies go when they are done with one flower and not yet arrived at the next. The grove continues. The morning continues. You are inside the morning, inside the grove, inside the forest, inside the Jurassic, nested in layers of scale from small to large, each layer doing its own particular thing at its own particular pace, all of them simultaneously present. The question that lives in this grove, the small, quiet question that the cycad fronds seem to be asking in their slow, patient morning, is something about pace, about the different paces at which different things happen, and about which pace is the right one for you, right now, in this morning. The mites on the frond move at one pace. The beetle moved at another. The lizard's patience was at a third. Your own breathing, in the warmth of the grove, has settled into a pace that you did not choose, and did not need to choose. The pace of a body at rest in a warm place, the pace of something that has found its equilibrium and is not in a hurry to disrupt it. Stay with this pace. It is yours right now. The grove will continue at its own paces, fast and slow and medium, all simultaneously, all appropriate to what is happening, and you will be inside it at your own pace, which is the pace of deep, comfortable, voluntary stillness. The warmth is real, the fronds are real, the small lives around you are real, your own rest, inside all of them, is real. Let it be complete. There is a particular quality of light that belongs exclusively to the last 30 minutes before a tropical sunset. You have seen it in your own era, that hour when the sun is low enough that its light must travel through more atmosphere before it reaches you, the shorter wavelengths scattered away, leaving only the reds and ambers and golds that the atmosphere cannot scatter, so that the whole western sky becomes a painting of warm colours, and the things the light falls on acquire a precision and warmth that they do not have at any other hour. In the Jurassic, with its clearer air and its different atmospheric chemistry, this hour is perhaps even more vivid than in your own time, but recognizably the same phenomenon, recognizably the same hour. You are back at the floodplain near the river, on a slight rise of sandy ground that puts you above the flat bottomland and gives you a view to the west. The view is wide, the floodplain extends for several kilometers in this direction before the treeline begins again, and beyond the treeline the first ridges of the young mountains are visible as dark shapes against the evening sky. The sky above all of this has done what evening skies do in the tropics, turned amber at the horizon, rose above the amber, purple above the rose, and shading upward into the deep, clean blue of the high atmosphere where the sun's scattered light is at its richest. The last light is on everything at once. The river catches it and makes it into a long, brilliant line of gold that runs from where you are sitting all the way to where the river bends out of sight behind the near tree line. The standing water of the flooded sections of the plain the rains have continued in the weeks since the first storm, and the plain is now carrying several inches of slowly moving water across most of its surface, catches the same light and holds it in 1,000 smaller versions of the same gold, each pool of water a mirror, each one showing you a sky that is red at the center and rose at the edges and somehow more beautiful for being seen in water than in the actual sky. The animals of the floodplain are in the last light too, a group of ornithopods, not the colony from the lakeshore but a different group, smaller and more loosely organized, spending the last hour of the day feeding in the open before they move into the forest margin for the night, are visible at the edge of the flooded plain, their dark bodies lit from the west side in a warm orange that makes their forms look carved rather than living, each one a shape of dark against the golden reflected water. They move slowly, heads down, feeding with the unhurried concentration of animals that have several hours of food remaining and no reason to hurry. You have been thinking about endings today. Not in a melancholy way, the thought arrived without distress and has remained without distress, simply present in the back of your mind as you move through the afternoon forest. You have been here for what feels like many days, though you have not been counting, and the sense of an ending is in the quality of this evening, the long golden light, the feeling that you have been somewhere and are now approaching the moment of departure, not with reluctance and not with eagerness, simply with the awareness that a particular experience is becoming complete. What have you taken from the Jurassic? Not specimens you carry, nothing material from this world. Not knowledge, exactly, you have received information about this world, some of which will remain with you and some of which will dissolve in the way that dream knowledge dissolves, present briefly and then gone without trace. What you have taken is something harder to name, something in the texture of the days you have spent here, the particular quality of a world without noise pollution or light pollution, or the constant hum of human activity, the quality of real silence and real darkness, and real proximity to living things, going about their ancient business without awareness of your presence. This quality does not have a name, though your era has been developing languages to approach it, the Japanese word for the particular beauty of natural things, the Danish word for the comfort of a warm space in cold weather, the Icelandic word for the hush of a specific kind of wind. The Jurassic has its own version of all of these things, untranslated, existing only in the experience of being here. You have been here. The experience has occurred. Whether or not you can name what it has given you, the giving has happened. The ornithopods on the plain have noticed something. They all lifted their heads at the same moment. You can see it from your rise of ground, the simultaneous raise of a dozen heads, the same instant of collective attention that social animals produce when something triggers a shared alert. They are not running. They are not even moving. They are simply attending, heads up, bodies still, the kind of attention that can resolve in several directions toward alarm and flight, or toward assessment and settling back to feeding, depending on what the next few seconds reveal. You watch with them. From your position, you can see more of the plain than they can. You can see to the south where the tree line curves, and there you can see what they have sensed. A large, dark shape at the edge of the trees, moving slowly at the margin, not approaching the open plain, but not withdrawing into the forest either. It is large enough to be the Allosaurus or something like it, though in this light and at this distance, it is only a shape, a large, bipedal shape that moves with the careful patience of a predator that knows it has been noticed and is recalibrating its approach. The ornithopods make their assessment. After perhaps 30 seconds of collective stillness, they begin to move not a panicked flight, but a purposeful, measured withdrawal toward the northern tree line, keeping the distance between themselves and the shape at the forest edge constant as they move. They do not run because they do not need to run. They have assessed the situation with the practical competence of animals that have been making this assessment every day of their lives and have learned, through the accumulated experience of their own lives and the inherited biological wisdom of their lineage, exactly how much distance is required and how quickly it needs to be maintained. They know this. They walk. The large shape at the southern tree line watches them go. After a time, you cannot tell how long, the evening light making the shape harder to see as the sun continues its descent, it withdraws back into the forest. The ornithopods continue their withdrawal, settle into the northern forest, and disappear. The floodplain is empty of large animals again. The water on its surface continues to reflect the increasingly red sky. The river continues its passage. Everything is as it was, slightly rearranged, and the evening continues. This is how it usually goes. The drama that the popular imagination associates with the Jurassic, the constant combat, the unceasing spectacle of predation, is not the primary texture of life here. The primary texture is this: animals eating, moving, resting, assessing, making decisions, withdrawing, settling, doing what they do. The predation happens. The death happens. But it happens in the context of vastly more ordinary time. Vastly more of this: the last light on the floodplain, the ornithopods feeding, the Allosaurus at the forest edge making its calculation and deciding that tonight is not the night. Most nights are not the night. Most hours of most days are this: the world going about its business in the ordinary way, life sustaining itself not through dramatic struggle, but through the quiet, continuous application of good enough judgment in good enough conditions. The sun is almost down. The red at the horizon has deepened to a colour for which your language has no satisfactory word beyond crimson, more orange than red, more gold than orange, a colour that exists only for these minutes and then is gone. The mountains to the west are black shapes against it, and the river is a black line, except where it catches the direct light of the last visible disk of the sun, and flares briefly into something incandescent before the sun slips below the horizon, and that too is gone. The afterlight remains for some time. The sky above the vanished sun continues to glow, working through its sequence of colours, the red fading to orange, the orange to gold, the gold to the warm green that appears at the top of the post-sunset sky in clear tropical air, and then transitions to the first blue of evening. The stars begin at the eastern horizon, appearing one by one as the sky darkens above them, and by the time the last traces of colour have faded in the west, the eastern sky is already generously starred. You sit on your rise of ground as the light goes. You are warm enough, the evening air of the floodplain retains the day's heat longer than the forest. The open ground releasing it slowly, and the evening is so quiet that you can hear the water on the floodplain moving over the occasional root or pebble in soft, continuous whispers. The ornithopods are invisible in the northern tree line, probably settling for the night. The Allosaurus is somewhere patient and dark. The river runs. The sky continues its performance of evening, reliable and complete, the same performance it has been giving every night of the Jurassic and will give every night of every era that follows. Let the evening have you. You do not need to watch it actively. It does not require your active attention to proceed. It will be here whether your eyes are open or closed, whether your mind is engaged or drifting. The evening is for everyone and for no one, and it does not keep score. Let your eyes soften on the darkening plain. Let your hands rest wherever they have fallen. Let the sounds of the evening, the water, the first insects of the night, the distant calls of things you have learned but no longer need to identify, let them be what they are, simply the sounds of the world doing its evening, and let those sounds carry you where they are going, which is into the quiet and the dark and the deep rest that follows a day of this much beauty. There is a world, beneath the world, you have been moving through, not metaphorically, literally. Below the surface of the forest floor, below the moss and the frond mat and the thin topsoil, the ground continues downward into an architecture of life and chemistry and geological process that is as complex and as inhabited as any world you could see with open eyes. You are lying on top of this world. Your weight is pressing gently on its surface. Your warmth is transmitting through its upper layers, and it is alive, below you, in ways that the most powerful magnification in your era cannot fully reveal. The topmost layer, the one your body touches, is the litter layer, the accumulation of recently shed organic material that has not yet been fully processed into soil. Down here, in the dark between the fronds, the organisms that process dead plant material into soil are working continuously. Fungi, not just the visible mushrooms, which are only the reproductive structures of fungal organisms that spread through the substrate in microscopic threads, but the mycelium, the thread-like body of the fungus itself, a network that permeates the entire litter layer and extends downward into the soil, connecting to the roots of the trees above through a symbiosis as ancient as the forest itself. The mycorrhizal network, the fungi that colonize the roots of most plant species, extending their reach into the soil and exchanging mineral nutrients for the sugars that the plants produce through photosynthesis, is one of the most significant and least visible systems in any terrestrial ecosystem. In your era, it has been discovered relatively recently that these networks allow plants to exchange nutrients and information with each other, that a large tree and a small seedling far from its canopy can be connected through fungal threads in the soil, resources flowing between them in ways that have challenged every assumption about the individuality of plant life. In the Jurassic forest, this network is already old. It has been running, in one form or another, since before the first trees. Below the litter layer, the mineral soil begins. It is darker here, stained by humic acids and the accumulated chemistry of centuries of biological processing, and it is structured not uniform, but arranged in layers of texture and composition, each layer the product of a different set of processes operating at a different time. In the spaces between the mineral particles, in the thin films of water that coat each grain of clay and silt, microscopic organisms live in densities that defy comprehension. In a single teaspoon of healthy soil in your era, there are estimated to be more individual organisms than there are people who have ever lived on Earth. The Jurassic forest floor, under your body right now, contains something on the same order of magnitude. What are they doing, all these invisible organisms? The same things that visible organisms do, at scales so small that their actions are measured in nanometers and their lifetimes in hours. They are eating consuming organic molecules, breaking complex compounds into simpler ones, releasing the chemical components of dead organisms back into the soil solution where plant roots can absorb them. They are reproducing, dividing, budding, generating new cells with remarkable rapidity in the warm, moist conditions of the summer soil. They are dying, and in dying, becoming food for other organisms slightly larger than themselves, which are food for others slightly larger still, the energy moving upward through the invisible food web of the soil toward the visible world above. Earthworms, or their Jurassic equivalents, are in the soil below you. You cannot see them, but their presence is written in the structure of the soil, the channels they create as they move through it, the casts they deposit on the surface, the mixing of layers that their passage through the soil accomplishes. The earthworm's role in soil formation is so fundamental that the soils that become available to plants in terrestrial ecosystems are, in a meaningful sense, earthworm products, the result of uncountable generations of worm passage through the mineral substrate, incorporating organic material, aerating, mixing, creating the structure that allows roots to penetrate and water to drain and microorganisms to inhabit. Everything you have seen in the Jurassic, the sauropods, the allosaurus, the pterosaurs, the sea and the cliffs and the nesting colony and the plateau under stars, all of it depends on this. The soil, the invisible processing, the fungi and the bacteria and the protists and the worms working in the dark below the visible world, converting dead matter into the mineral wealth that feeds the plants, that feed everything else. The whole spectacular visible Jurassic rests on this foundation, depends on it, could not continue for a season without it, and it is happening right now, below your body, in the dark. There is something deeply restful about this knowledge if you hold it correctly. The most important work in the Jurassic is being done in the dark, without drama, without visibility, by organisms that have no consciousness of their work's importance and no interest in recognition. The world's foundation is maintained by what no one watches. The visible grandeur of the Jurassic is produced and sustained by invisible labour, by a patience so deep and a continuity so complete that no individual organism can comprehend it, only participate in it. Your own body is part of this system, temporarily. The weight of you pressing into the forest floor compresses the litter layer slightly, creating slightly different conditions in the compressed area than in the surrounding uncompressed litter. The warmth of your body is altering the temperature in the immediate substrate, and that temperature change affects the rate of microbial activity in the soil beneath you. The moisture in your breath, landing on the surface near your face, is being absorbed into the litter and making a slightly more moist microhabitat there. You are changing this small section of the Jurassic forest floor by being here, and the forest floor is changing its activity in response. You are in a relationship with this ground even while you lie on it doing nothing, and the relationship runs in both directions. Let this be something you carry with you from the Jurassic, if you carry anything, the knowledge of what is invisible. Your era's difficulty with this, the tendency to attend to what is dramatic and large and visible, to measure importance by scale and sound, is a limitation of perception, not of reality. Reality has no preference for the visible. The most significant processes are often the ones that require the most effort to see, and the most durable structures are often the ones that are least apparent. The forest stands on what is underneath it. The Jurassic's grandeur rests on its invisible foundation. The visible world always rests on what is underneath it. The night has deepened around you while you have been thinking about the soil. The stars are high past their zenith now, beginning their descent toward the western horizon, the night more than half done. The forest is at its quietest, the animal activity of the earlier evening hours replaced by the still, deep quiet of the middle of the night, when even the nocturnal hunters are resting, and the diurnal animals are in their deepest sleep, and the world is, as close as it ever gets, simply the world at rest. The soil beneath you is not resting. It never rests. The microorganisms have no day and night. Their world is defined by chemical gradients and temperature and moisture, not by light, and they work through the darkness as continuously as through the day. While you lie here going still, while the forest goes quiet, while the sauropods sleep and the Allosaurus rests and the pterosaurs hang from their cliff face roosts, the soil beneath you is working with the same constant, invisible, patient industry with which it has been working since before the Jurassic began. It will be working when the sun rises. It will be working when the rains return. It will be working for the next 145 million years until the Jurassic ends and the soil of the Cretaceous forms on top of it. Feel the ground beneath you one more time. The solid reality of it, the firmness that resists your weight and holds you clear of the invisible world below, the warmth that it has given you through the hours of this night. The smell of it, which is the smell of the invisible activity occurring just below your body's contact with its surface. This ground is not passive. It is not inert. It is alive below you in the same way and for the same reasons that you are alive above it. And the fact that its life and yours are so different in their forms and their scales and their durations does not make the connection between them any less real. You are resting on something that is alive. The aliveness of the thing beneath you is part of what makes your rest possible. The soil processes that built the litter you are lying on, the fungi that produced the forest you are inside, the long, invisible work that fed the plants that built this canopy above you and produced this oxygen in the air. Your lungs are drawing in. You are held by a living system. You are inside a living system. You are tonight completely dependent on it, and it is right now sustaining you without effort or awareness. Let yourself be held. Let yourself be sustained. The world beneath you knows what it is doing. There is an afternoon in the Jurassic that belongs to no one in particular. It is not morning, when the animals are most active and the light is freshest and everything is moving toward the day's first needs. It is not evening, when the light has its particular beauty and the day is resolving into its final hours. It is the long middle of the afternoon, the hours between noon and the late afternoon, when the sun is high and the temperature is at its peak, and the forest is in a state of quiet that has its own quality, distinct from the quiet of the night. This is the time the large animals rest. This is the time the forest breathes most slowly. This is the time you have for yourself. You are sitting at the base of one of the largest trees you have found. It is an Araucarian conifer, like many of the large trees in this forest, but this one is exceptional even by their standards. Its base is perhaps 4 meters across, its trunk rising clean and unbroken for 30 meters before the first branches begin, its bark a complex texture of parallel ridges and horizontal crevices that have been accumulating for the 4 or 5 centuries this tree has been alive. It is the oldest living thing you have encountered in the Jurassic, and its size and age are visible in the particular quality of stillness. It projects a stillness that is not the stillness of a stopped thing, but of a thing that moves so slowly that its movement is invisible on any timescale a human can observe. The tree is doing things. Right now, in this afternoon, it is photosynthesizing in every leaf of its enormous crown, producing sugars from sunlight and carbon dioxide and water. It is moving those sugars down through the phloem, the living transport tissue just inside the bark, to the parts of the tree that need them, the growing tips of branches and roots, the cambium layer that is adding new wood and bark this season, the roots themselves, extending and exploring the soil in their slow search for mineral nutrients. It is transpiring water through its leaves into the air, drawing up more water through the xylem from the soil below, the entire column of water from root to leaf maintained by the physics of surface tension and the atmospheric pressure differential between wet soil and dry air. If you put your ear to the bark, you would hear something. A very faint, intermittent sound that is not quite a creak and not quite a hiss. The sound of the tree's vascular tissue under the tension of its own water column. The sound of the mechanism that has been moving water from soil to sky in trees for hundreds of millions of years. The tree is, in this sense, speaking not in any language you could decode, but producing sound as a byproduct of its own internal processes, the way a city produces the hum of its traffic as a byproduct of all the individual movements within it. The afternoon light comes through the canopy above you in the particular way of high sunlight through dense canopy, not as direct beams, which the dense crown above prevents, but as a diffuse, even illumination that has been scattered and rescattered until it has lost all directional quality and simply fills the air. In this light, the forest has no shadows. Every surface is equally illuminated from all directions, the leaves above catching and distributing the light so completely that there is nothing left to cast a shadow with. This is not the dappled light of forest edges or the beam-filled light of less dense canopy. This is forest interior light at high noon, complete, even, sourceless, and very beautiful. What does the sauropod do in this hour? The same thing you are doing, resting. The large sauropods, which need to eat enormous quantities of vegetation to sustain their metabolisms, spend much of the morning hours in active feeding, browsing the high canopy with their long necks, processing enormous amounts of low nutritional value conifer foliage with their inefficient grinding teeth, and delegating much of the digestive work to the fermenting microbiome in their enormous gut. But in the afternoon heat, even they rest. They find shelter not in the deep forest, where the vegetation is too dense for their bulk, but in the shade of the tall trees at the forest margin, where they stand in loose groups, heads lowered to a resting position, their enormous bodies motionless, except for the slow rise and fall of each breath. The Stegosaurus in the valley rests too. In the heat of the afternoon, the plates on its back, those remarkable thermal structures, are doing their most active work, the blood vessels within them dilated, the blood passing through them and being cooled by the air moving across the plate's surface before returning to the body's core. The animal stands in the least sheltered part of the valley during this hour, maximizing the airflow across its plates, and it is almost completely still. From a distance, in the afternoon light, it could be mistaken for a large rock with an unusual profile. It is not a rock. It is a very large, very warm animal in the process of managing its temperature with the same patient biology with which it manages everything else. In the forest, in this afternoon hour, there is a particular sound that belongs to it and to no other hour, the sound of settlement. Timber that has been heated through the morning is contracting slightly as the air around it reaches equilibrium, producing the occasional soft tick or pop from deep within the bark. The forest floor, which has been cooling and warming with each cloud that passed over the sun during the morning hours, has now reached its afternoon temperature and is no longer changing, and the absence of the slight sounds of thermal change produces a quality of stillness that has the texture of a held breath. There are dragonflies or their Jurassic equivalents, large-winged, ancient lineage insects that predate even the dinosaurs and will outlast them at the edge of the clearing near the tree you are sitting against. They hold position in the air with a precision that is not quite hovering. They do not beat their wings fast enough for true hovering, but a constant small adjustment of wing angle that maintains their position against the slight afternoon air movement. Dragonfly flight is one of the most efficient in the insect world, capable of directional changes that no bird or bat can match, a product of their unusual wing muscle arrangement that allows independent control of each wing. They are hunting, in their efficient, unhurried way, watching for smaller insects, and making the occasional darting departure from their position before returning. The caught prey processed in midair with a rapidity that makes the event look less like an event than like a brief change in attitude. The afternoon quiet gives you time for something you have not had much of in the Jurassic, the luxury of doing nothing at all. Not watching, not attending, not tracking the movements of animals, or the progress of the light. Simply sitting, your back against the ancient bark, your hands loose in your lap, your eyes at half focus on the general forest air. There is nothing required of you right now. The forest does not need your observation to continue being the forest. The afternoon does not need your attention to continue its slow, warm passage. You can simply be here, unheld by any particular task or attention, floating in the present tense the way the dragonfly floats in the afternoon air. What does it feel like? Doing nothing. In your era, doing nothing is an activity that requires deliberate permission. It does not occur naturally. It is not offered automatically. It must be chosen against a constant pressure toward productivity and engagement and forward motion. In the Jurassic afternoon, doing nothing is simply what the afternoon is for. The forest has no agenda for you. The large trees have been here for centuries without requiring your assistance. The birds in the canopy are managing their own affairs. Nothing is waiting for your decision. Nothing will be worse for your inattention. You can simply be here. Let this be practice for the sleep that is coming. The skill of resting in the present, without requiring it to be different, without asking it to be more interesting, or more productive, or more comfortable than it already is the skill that sleep requires of you every night. Sleep does not accept conditions or preferences. It comes when you stop trying to direct your experience and simply allow what is. The Jurassic afternoon is a good teacher of this. Everything here is what it is, completely and without apology. And the correct response to what it is, the response the afternoon itself suggests, the response the large tree embodies, and the Stegosaur enacts and the dragonfly performs, is to be what you are, completely and without apology, in the same moment. The sun is beginning its very first movement toward the afternoon's end, not yet visible as evening, not yet producing the golden light of late afternoon, but subtly different from the high noon quality of an hour ago, the light a fraction less intense, the air a fraction less still, the forest beginning its imperceptible preparation for the more active evening hours. You can feel this shift without seeing it, a very slight change in the warmth of the light on your face, a very slight increase in the movement of air through the canopy. The afternoon is not over, but its very long middle hour is ending, giving way to something slightly more awake. You are not required to wake with it. The afternoon's end can happen around you without requiring your participation in the waking it implies. The forest will become more active whether you are active within it or not. The animals will begin to move again whether you are watching or not. The light will change whether your eyes are open to receive it or closed against the warm, amber glow of the afternoon sun on your eyelids. All of it will proceed. All of it has always proceeded in this forest. In every afternoon this forest has ever had, proceeding whether or not any particular observer was present to witness the proceeding. And so, rest. The afternoon will continue without you. The tree behind you will continue its slow work. The soil below you will continue its invisible industry. The dragonflies will continue their patient aerial hunting. The Jurassic will continue being the Jurassic, complete, unhurried, enormous, alive in every surface and layer and breath, and you will be inside it, resting, warm, comfortable, doing the most ancient and necessary thing that living bodies do, restoring themselves in the quiet middle of a long, warm, uncomplicated afternoon. There is a morning that belongs to the feeling of being almost ready to leave. 9. Not the last morning, not the morning that ends the visit, but the morning before it, when you know that the time remaining is short and the knowledge of this makes you see everything a little more completely, attend to it a little more fully, register details that you might otherwise have allowed to pass unremarked. This is that morning. You have been in the Jurassic long enough that parts of it feel familiar. You know the sound of this forest at dawn. You know the first light's colour. You know the direction the sauropod herd moves when they leave the river. And you also know, without being told, that the time is running out. The morning has begun with rain. Not the heavy wet season rain of earlier that has passed for now. The weather system that brought it moved on, and what is falling this morning is lighter, more intermittent. The kind of rain that falls from a sky that is half cloud and half clear blue. The drops that reach you, sitting in the shelter of the root buttress alcove where you have spent so many nights, are few and irregular, the occasional cold point of contact on your hand or face, a dripping from the root above that hits the moss beside you and makes a small, regular sound. The air smells of wet forest in the way it does only at the beginning of rain, when the dry surfaces first receive moisture and release into the air everything they have been holding dry. You are watching the forest wake up. This is what you could not fully do on your first morning here, when everything was too new and too overwhelming for the kind of patient, comprehensive watching that familiarity allows. Now you know what is going to happen. In the broad strokes, the light sequence, the sound sequence, the sequence of animal activity that follows the dawn, like a conversation following a prompt, and knowing what is going to happen allows you to attend to the specifics of how it happens this particular morning, which is always slightly different from how it happened every other morning. The first birdline dinosaur calls from the canopy. It is one you have been hearing every morning of your stay here. A two-note call, rising, repeated 3 times, and then silent for a variable interval before repeating again. In the first days you tried to locate it, craning your head to find the animal that made the sound. Now you simply receive the sound as you receive the other morning sounds, without the impulse to locate its source. It is part of the morning. It is the morning's first voice. The sauropod herd begins moving while the light is still only just enough to see by. You can hear them before you see them. The footfalls, the occasional crack of a branch displaced by a passing neck, the soft, resonant exhalations that carry well through still forest air. They move past the edge of the clearing where you can see the forest margin, their shapes dark against the pale early sky, the characteristic upward angle of the Brachiosaurus neck visible even in silhouette. There are more of them this morning than you have seen together before the full herd, perhaps 15 or 20 animals of various sizes, moving toward the river in the particular loose, meandering line that the herd always makes when it is not alarmed, the young animals staying near the adults, the largest adults at the margins. You count them, not because counting is necessary, you are not making a census, but because counting is a way of attending individually to each animal as it passes, giving each one its moment of your full attention. 3 adults. 4 adults. A juvenile, smaller and more forward energetic, trotting briefly to keep up. 2 more adults, walking close together, their bodies occasionally touching as they move, a casual contact that might mean something, or might mean nothing, that is not your kind of social signal to read. Another juvenile. Another adult. The procession continues, unhurried and unremarkable, the most ordinary thing in this landscape, giants moving toward water in the morning, until the last of them has passed the clearing, and the sound of their footfalls has faded, and the forest is quiet again. The rain has stopped. While you were counting the sauropods, the intermittent drops have ceased, and the air has cleared somewhat, and the quality of light has shifted from the grey damp of rain to the particular brightness of post-rain, morning, everything washed, everything slightly more vivid, the green of the forest deeper and more saturated, the sky where it shows through the canopy a blue that has something of the sea in it. Drops cling to the fronds around you and to the bark of the tree above, and to the ends of every hanging structure, each drop a perfect sphere holding within it a tiny, inverted image of the forest. Watch a single drop fall. Choose one, the one hanging from the very tip of a fern frond directly above you, visible as a bright point of refracted light. Watch it accumulate the slow drip from the frond surface growing over a minute or two. As more water reaches it, the sphere enlarging incrementally, the light it holds shifting as its size changes. Watch it reach the point of instability, when the water it holds exceeds what surface tension can support, and fall. The fall is barely visible, a fraction of a second. A bright streak, and then the drop has reached the moss below and absorbed into it and is gone, its individual existence over, its water now part of the moss's water, and soon part of the soil's water, and eventually part of the river's water, and in due course, part of the sea. This is what every individual in the Jurassic is, a temporary organization of matter that will eventually dissolve back into the surrounding systems. The drop was a drop because of the physics of surface tension. The Stegosaur is a Stegosaur because of the genetics of the Stegosaur lineage. You are you because of the particular improbable specificity of your own biology and history. All of these are temporary, conditional forms that matter takes before resuming its passage through the larger systems that contain all temporary forms. None of this is sad. It is simply true, in the way that gravity is true and water flows downhill is true at every scale and in every era. The same fact appearing in different expressions at different sizes and different timescales. The morning is fully bright now. The light has reached the full, even, moist brightness of a post-rain morning in a green landscape, and everything is vivid and clean-edged. The forest around you is exactly as it has been every morning. You have woken in it the same trees, the same understory, the same density of life in every direction, and is also, this morning, more itself than it has been on any previous morning, because this morning you are seeing it with the full attention that knowledge of impending departure produces. There is a small ceremony that mornings perform in every era that has them. Not a literal ceremony, nothing that requires participants or intention, but a sequence of events that has the quality of ceremony. The light arriving, the animals beginning, the day's first activities initiated in the order that they always are, each element following the previous one with the reliability of a ritual performed so many times that its performance has become indistinguishable from necessity. You've been inside this ceremony every morning of your stay in the Jurassic, and on this next to last morning, you are aware of being inside it in a way that you were not quite aware before. The ceremony will continue after you leave. The ceremony has been continuing since before you arrived. What you will take from here, eventually, when the Jurassic finally releases you back into your own time, is this: the knowledge of what a morning is, not your era's version of morning, with its particular demands and its particular noises and its particular quality of impending day, but the thing underneath all those versions, the original morning, the thing that all mornings in all eras share, which is the return of light and warmth and sound to a world that went quiet and cool and dark for a few hours and is now resuming. Every morning you ever wake to, in your own era, in your own bed, in your own particular life, that morning is the Jurassic morning too, underneath. The same sun, the same rotation, the same return of light to a planet that has been sleeping on one side while the other faced the dark. You have slept here, in this world, on this planet, under this sun. Your rest has been real. Your warmth has been real. The sounds you have fallen asleep to have been real. And when you return to your own time and your own place, those sounds will still be available to you, not audibly, not actually, but in the body's knowledge of what rest inside a living world feels like. You will carry that knowledge forward with you, the way the river carries everything it has been given, the way the soil carries the chemistry of everything that has lived in it. The Jurassic will be in you after this. It cannot be otherwise. The morning continues. The sauropods are at the river now, drinking their morning portion. The small theropods are in the understory, beginning their day's work. The stegosaurs are warming their plates in the valley. The pterosaurs have launched from their cliff perches and are already over the sea, reading the water for the signs of fish schools. The nesting colony is in full morning voice. The Allosaurus is somewhere, patient and moving. The sea is the sea, the river is the river, the forest is the forest. All of it, right now, completely itself, completely real, completely continuing. You are inside it. You are held by it. And the morning is very beautiful, and you are very fortunate to be awake inside it. The rain-washed light falls through every gap in the canopy, and where it falls it illuminates the hanging moisture in the air itself, not quite rain, not quite mist, but something between the two, the forest's own exhaled breath made visible by light. You breathe it in. It carries with it every compound the forest produces, the sharp resin of the conifers, the earthen warmth of wet moss, the faint sweetness of the flowering plants that are just beginning, in this era, to work out the chemistry of petals and fragrance, still experimenting with what will eventually become the elaborate vocabulary of scent that draws the pollinators, that will, in 100 million years of continued refinement, produce the world of flowers you know. But already something is here. Already something is beginning. The forest, even now, smells like a forest, like the particular promise that green and living things make to the air around them, which is the promise of more life, more continuation, more of the patient abundance that is what the Jurassic has been showing you all night. You close your eyes and breathe it in once more. You do not need to name it. You do not need to understand its chemistry. You simply receive it, the way the Jurassic receives everything, without urgency, without judgment, without anything other than the deep continuing fact of being here. You have been thinking, in the long middle of this last full night, about breathing. Not your breathing specifically, though. Your breathing is the most immediate example. But breathing as a phenomenon, as the common operation that all animals with lungs perform, the fundamental rhythm that underlies every other rhythm in the living world. Your era knows that trees breathe too. Though not in the way that animals breathe, they take in carbon dioxide and release oxygen through the day. The reverse at night, the two processes running at different rates and producing the net oxygen surplus that the atmosphere depends on. The Jurassic forest around you is breathing right now, every leaf in every tree and every frond, in every fern, processing air in the dark, the sum of all of it constituting a respiratory event on a scale you cannot quite comprehend. In the history of life on Earth, the accumulation of oxygen in the atmosphere was the result of photosynthetic life, breathing of countless generations of algae and plants, and cyanobacteria processing carbon dioxide and releasing oxygen as a byproduct, over a period of time so long that the oxygen built up in the atmosphere, even though each individual organism produced only a tiny fraction of a molecule's worth. The oxygen you are breathing right now, in the Jurassic night, is the legacy of all of those organisms, billions of years of respiratory work deposited in the atmosphere, the way sediment is deposited in a riverbed slowly, continuously, imperceptibly in any single moment, but cumulatively producing something extraordinary. Your lungs are about 1,100 cubic centimeters of volume. On average, with each breath you take, you move perhaps half a liter of air through that volume, exchanging oxygen for carbon dioxide in the microscopic sacs where gas exchange occurs. Your blood carries the oxygen to your cells, where it participates in the reactions that produce the energy your body uses to maintain itself, to move, to think, to feel, to rest. The carbon dioxide produced by those reactions travels back through your blood to your lungs and is exhaled, joining the atmosphere, available to be captured by the leaves of the cycads, and the conifers and the ferns around you, processed again, the oxygen released again, the whole cycle continuing. You are not separate from the atmosphere. You are part of it temporarily, conditionally, in the same sense that the river is part of the water cycle. The air passes through you. You capture some components and return others. You are a node in a cycle, not an isolated system. The boundary of your skin is a real boundary. In some senses, it defines where your body ends and the air begins, but it is not a boundary in the sense of being a barrier. The air passes through it constantly, in the form of the gases that your lungs exchange, the moisture that your skin releases, the volatile organic compounds that your metabolism produces. You are in constant exchange with the world around you. The forest is in the same exchange with you. The oxygen it releases today you will breathe tomorrow. The carbon dioxide you exhale will be taken up by the nearest leaf within minutes. You are in a respiratory relationship with this forest, immediate and continuous, and the relationship has been continuous since you arrived and would continue for as long as you stayed. You are inside the forest's breathing. You are a participant in it, making your small contribution of carbon dioxide and taking your small share of oxygen, the same share that the small lizards and the beetles and the mycorrhizal fungi and every other aerobic organism in the forest is taking. There is a particular quality to the air in the forest at midnight. It is different from the daytime air, not only in temperature but in composition. The long hours of plant respiration in the dark have elevated the carbon dioxide content very slightly, the oxygen content has dropped correspondingly, and the combination of these small changes and the lower temperature produces an air that feels, to breathe, slightly richer and denser than the daytime air. It is not thick, it is fine, clean Jurassic air, free of any pollutant. But it has a quality of substance to it that daytime air lacks, something the respiratory system registers as sufficiency, as the air being exactly what air should be. Your own breathing has been slowing progressively throughout the hours of this night. Not through any deliberate practice, you have not been trying to slow it. You have simply been resting in comfortable warmth, in a safe place, inside a world that requires nothing of you. And the body, given this permission, has followed its own logic toward the breathing rate that belongs to deep rest. Slow, deep, regular. Each breath a complete cycle of in and out, each cycle slightly longer than the one before it. The body has been moving toward this rate all night, and has now arrived at it, and the rate it has found is so slow and so complete that each breath feels, from inside, like an event, something that deserves to be fully experienced before it gives way to the next one. Listen to your own breathing. In the quiet of the midnight forest, you can hear it. Not loudly, the sound is small and close, the sound of air moving through your nose and throat and into your lungs and back out again. But in the midnight quiet, with the forest sounds serving as a background rather than a foreground, your own breathing is audible to you in a way it rarely is during the day, when other sounds fill the space around it. Listen to it for a while, just the sound of air moving through you, the most fundamental sound of your being alive. The forest breathes around your breathing. Its breathing is not audible in the same way it produces no sound that you can hear directly, no exhalation you can track. But you know it is happening. You know the leaves above you are in the dark respiration of nighttime photosynthesis. You know the fungi in the soil below are processing oxygen. You know the bacteria in the bark of the trees are operating their own respiratory chemistry. You know that the air you are breathing has already passed through the forest and will pass through it again, and has been passed through countless previous forests before this one. The air is ancient and the air is continuous, and you are inside its continuous passage through the world. There is a question at the center of all this breathing, a question that your era's contemplative traditions have been asking in various forms for as long as they have existed. What is it that breathes? Not the lungs are the mechanism, not the body is the container. What is the thing that breathes? The thing that continues from one breath to the next, that is present through the inhale and the exhale and the pause between them, that does not stop being itself when the breath stops and does not become more itself when the breath begins? What is that? You are not required to answer this question tonight. It is, in fact, a question that benefits from not being answered, that opens something when you hold it and closes something when you resolve it prematurely. Let it be a question you carry into the breathing, not away from it. What breathes? Let the breathing be the answer, in the way that experience is sometimes the only available answer, not by explaining, but by being what is being asked about. The night is at its deepest now. This is the pre-dawn nadir, the hour furthest from both the previous dawn and the approaching one, the hour when everything alive is either in its deepest rest or doing the quiet maintenance work of the dark. The air is at its coolest. The stars, where visible, are near their lowest points on the western horizon, the dome of the night sky beginning its almost imperceptible tipping toward the morning. Not yet, the morning is still some time away. But the night has turned the corner of its own longitude and is moving, invisibly and certainly, in the direction of the next day. Your body knows this. Something in your physiology knows the position of the night, even when you cannot see it. Some internal clock, ancient and reliable, that has been keeping track of the time while your conscious mind has been resting. This clock is beginning to prepare, not to wake you, not yet, not for some hours, but to begin the long, slow preparation that the body performs before waking, the slight increase in cortisol that will eventually, hours from now, bring you to the surface. For now, it is only the very beginning of that process. For now, the night is still the night, and your rest is still deep, and there is nothing yet to prepare for. Let your breathing continue its slow, complete work. Let each breath bring in the Jurassic night air, its oxygen and its carbon dioxide and its particular organic volatiles, and its slight dampness from the post-rain forest, and let each exhale release what you no longer need from it. This exchange is so continuous and so basic that most of your life it proceeds entirely without your awareness. Tonight, in this quiet forest, in this deep hour, you are aware of it. You are breathing the Jurassic night air. You are in respiratory relationship with this ancient forest. You are inside the breathing of the world, and the world breathes you. The forest takes what you release. The night air circulates through you and through the trees and through the soil organisms and through the river's surface and through the sea. Everything is in exchange with everything else. The whole living and semi-living world in a constant, invisible, patient conversation conducted in molecules rather than words. You are in that conversation. You have always been in that conversation, from your first breath to this one. Let it carry you now, as it always has, into rest, into the dark, into the deep and wordless country of sleep, where the conversation continues without your needing to listen to it. There is a place below waking and above the deepest sleep, where the mind is still aware of itself but is no longer making decisions about what to attend to. You have been moving toward this place for some time tonight, not as a destination you are trying to reach, but as somewhere the Jurassic has been guiding you, by degrees, through the long sequence of this evening's stories and images and moments of simple presence. You are close now. The quality of your awareness has changed. It is softer than it was, less insistent on specificity, more willing to let the images come and go without following them. The forest is here. You do not need to see it to know it is here. The warmth of the ground is here. The sound of the insects is here. The smell of the forest night, rich, organic, alive, is here. These things are not requiring your attention. They are simply present, the way the world is present even when you stop attending to it, continuing their operations in the space around your resting body regardless of whether you are conscious of them or not. Let them be present without your attention. Let the forest be the forest without your witness. The sauropods are somewhere in the dark, large and warm and sleeping. The Allosaurus is somewhere, its patient intelligence briefly at rest, its body lowered to the forest floor in whatever posture large theropods use when they allow themselves to rest. The pterosaurs are hanging from their cliff face, their bodies folded, their wings tucked, their breathing slow. The nesting colony has its adults at quiet watch, and its young sleeping in the warmth of the nests. The ammonites drift in the dark water of the sea, their shells unchanged from how they were when the light was on them, their soft bodies continuing their slow passage through the water. All of it is happening. None of it requires you to be awake for it. You are becoming less aware of the boundary of your body. This happens in the approach to sleep the nerve endings at the skin's surface, which during waking maintain a constant map of the body's outline, begin to reduce their reporting. The data stream from the periphery slowing, the brain's construction of the body image beginning to soften at its edges. You are still here. Your body is still exactly where it is, but you are becoming less certain of exactly where that is, and the uncertainty is comfortable rather than alarming. The boundary between you and the forest floor beneath you is becoming approximate. Follow the images as they come. Do not direct them. If the river appears behind your eyes, let it be the river, the braided moonlit section, or the morning river with the sauropods drinking, or any section of it your mind chooses to place before you. If the Stegosaur Valley appears, let it be the valley. If the sea cliff appears, with the pterosaurs launching from it into the morning updrafts, let it be the sea cliff. The images are the Jurassic offering itself to you one more time, in the form that is most native to the approach to sleep, the sequence of half-formed images that precedes the full images of dream, the mind beginning to generate its own visual content from the material it has been given. The cycad grove. The morning beetle on the bark. The amber eye of the small dinosaur that watched you from the forest edge on your first evening. The stars through the gap. In the canopy. The warm gravel bar by the river, and the night sky reflected in the dark water. The limestone ledge on the sea cliff, and the pterosaur that launched from above you with the sound of a sail catching wind. The nesting adults, and the small animals pressing against each other in the warmth of the nest. The Allosaurus moving through the pre-dawn forest, its footfalls received through the ground as slow pulses. The sauropods at the river in the morning, the largest one raising its head to its full height against a sky that was just barely light. These images are yours now. They belong to you in the way that things experienced, rather than merely learned, belong to you not as information that can be recalled accurately and consistently, but as something that has entered the body and the deep memory, the kind of remembering that is not deliberate, but that surfaces unexpectedly, years later, in a smell or a quality of light, or a sound that matches something you once experienced and stored without filing. The Jurassic will be in you like that. Not as a list of facts, but as a quality, a texture of experience that your body has received and will hold in its own way, for its own duration. The warmth beneath you is constant. Lie into it. Not with effort, there is no effort required for this. The weight of your body is already doing it. The gravity of the Jurassic Earth, the same gravity as the Earth of your own era, pulling you steadily downward into the ground that receives you. The resistance is small, just the softness of the moss or the frond mat or the warm limestone or the gravel, whichever surface your mind has placed you on for this last hour. And beneath that small resistance, the ground itself, solid, ancient, warm, alive below its surface, completely reliable in its presence. The sound of the insects has become, over the hours of this night, so continuous and so familiar that it is no longer registering as a distinct sound, but as a quality of the silence, the particular silence of a place that is never quite silent, a silence with texture, a silence that has been present since before you arrived and will continue after you have gone. This is the silence the Jurassic offers, not the absence of sound, but the presence of so much continuous, gentle, non-threatening sound that the sound itself becomes a form of quiet. You are going somewhere. Not away from the Jurassic will hold you a while longer yet, but somewhere within it, somewhere below the surface of your awareness, into the country that lies beneath language and beneath image and beneath the sense of the body's boundaries. This is the country that sleep opens. You approach it gradually from above, as you might approach the surface of the sea from above, seeing it from a distance first, then closer, then feeling the resistance of the surface at the moment of entry, and then through the surface, into the warmer and quieter and more complete world below. The Jurassic accompanies you to the threshold and waits there. It cannot follow you into sleep, no world can follow you there, only the traces of what the world has given you during the waking hours. The traces it has given you tonight are warmth and vastness, and the smell of an ancient living world and the sound of creatures going about their ancient business without alarm. These traces will be with you as you go deeper. They are the last things the waking mind lets go of, the good things, the safe things, the things that have been telling your body all evening that the world is in order and rest is possible. The world is in order. The Jurassic is exactly what it has always been. The Sauropods will drink from the river tomorrow morning, and the Stegosaurs will warm their plates in the valley, and the Allosaurus will move through the forest following its own patient knowledge. The pterosaurs will launch from the cliff, and the nesting colony will make its morning noise, and the ammonites will drift in the warm sea. All of it will continue, whether you are awake to witness it or not, whether you are in the Jurassic or in your own time, whether you are sleeping or waking or somewhere between. And you, right now, warm, lying down, breathing slowly, inside the world's oldest and most patient darkness. The surface of sleep is very close. You have been approaching it for hours. Let it receive you now. Let the warmth of the ground come up through you, and let your muscles release the last of their tone. Let your thoughts become images, and let the images become the fluid associative sequence of the dreaming mind, and let the dreaming mind go where it goes forward, into the deep, uncomplicated country of genuine rest. The Jurassic holds you while you go. 150 million years of accumulated patience. 150 million years of mornings following nights, following mornings. 150 million years of living things, finding the places that allow them to rest and resting in them. All of this is underneath you. All of this is in the ground that holds your weight. All of this is in the air that fills your lungs with each slow, deep, complete breath. You are held by all of it. You are inside all of it. And the going deeper is not a departure from this world, but a movement further into it, into the oldest part of it, the part that existed before language, before thought, before any creature complex enough to wonder about its own existence, the simple, warm, held darkness of a living thing at rest. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to see more videos like this, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel, as it really helps us continue making more content. Anyways, see you in the next one. The morning is coming. You cannot see it yet. The sky above the gap in the canopy is still dark, still full of stars. The Milky Way still crossing its diagonal path through the rectangle of open air above you. But somewhere to the east, somewhere beyond the forest and the floodplain and the river you have been following, the horizon is beginning its slow brightening. The same brightening it began on every morning of the Jurassic, patient and certain, and completely indifferent to whether anyone is awake to witness it. Let it come without you. Let the morning light move across the landscape without your eyes following it. Let the first birds begin in the canopy without your ears attending to them. Let the sauropods begin their walk to the river without your watching their enormous feet on the morning ground. Let the Allosaurus begin its patient rounds without your mind following its progress through the trees. Let the Stegosaurs begin to move in the valley. Let the pterosaurs launch from the sea cliffs. Let the nesting colony begin its morning noise. Let the river run. Let the sea move. All of it can happen without you. It was happening before you arrived, and it will continue after you are gone, and the Jurassic does not need your witness to be what it is. You have been here. You have been present. You have received what this world offers, which is more than a name or a number or a list of species. You have received the quality of it, the warmth, the sound, the smell, the scale, the patience. These things are now in your body along with your own warmth and your own breathing and your own weight against the earth. Let your eyes stay closed. Let the Jurassic continue in the dark behind your eyelids, not as something you are watching, but as something you are inside. The way you are always inside the world, even when you are not thinking about it. The forest is around you. The night is above you. The morning is coming slowly from very far away. Breathe. Just breathe. Each breath carrying you a little further from the edge of waking, a little deeper into the warm dark that is the same in every era. The dark behind closed eyes, the dark of sleep, the dark, where the Jurassic and all its long life continues in the form of your own resting body, your own slowing mind, your own deep and certain breath. There is something the Jurassic knows about time that you are learning tonight. It knows that time is not a line moving forward with urgency, demanding speed and conclusion and arrival. Time, in the Jurassic, is simply the medium through which life moves, the way water is the medium through which fish move, not something they are rushing through toward a destination, but something they are inside, completely and without effort. The Jurassic did not try to arrive anywhere. It simply was, fully and completely, in each of its 160 million years. And this night, which is one small unit of a much smaller era, can be the same. This night does not need to arrive anywhere. It simply is. You are inside it. Let it carry you. The forest floor is warm beneath you. The warmth comes from the day stored in the soil, the same solar warmth that moved through the ferns and the cycads and the bark of the conifers throughout the long afternoon, and settled into the earth as the light faded. It is releasing now, slowly, into the night air and into the body of anything resting on the ground. Your body is receiving it. The warmth moves upward through whatever is between you and the ground, entering at the points of contact, your back, your shoulders, your legs, and spreading inward and upward through the body's own warmth-distributing systems until the distinction between the warmth coming from below and the warmth your body generates itself becomes impossible to locate. You are warm. The earth is warm. There is no boundary. Consider what the Jurassic built in 160 million years, and consider what that means about the nature of patience. It built forests so tall their canopies were at a height that no land animal alive today approaches. It built animals so large that their footsteps were felt through the ground before the animals themselves became visible. It built reefs that stretched across the shallow interior seas of continents. It built the ancestors of everything that would come after the small feathered things that would eventually take to the air fully, the small, warm mammals hidden in the forest understory that would eventually fill every ecological space the great dinosaurs left empty. None of this was rushed. None of this was directed. It simply proceeded, day by day, at the pace the world set for it, and the world set a very slow pace, and the outcome was everything you have seen tonight. Your own rest works this way. It does not respond to urgency. It cannot be directed toward a conclusion. It proceeds at its own pace, which is a very slow pace. The pace of breathing and of warmth spreading through the body and of the mind, releasing its hold on the specific concerns of the waking day. The more you allow this pace without trying to hurry it, the more thoroughly it proceeds. You have been allowing it. You have been here in the Jurassic, not trying to arrive at sleep but simply resting in this world that is old enough to make all urgency seem small. The insects are continuous. The river is continuous. The breath of the forest is continuous, the vast transpiration of moisture through millions of leaves, rising into the night air, making the air heavy and fragrant and close. Your own breath is continuous. These continuities rhyme with each other, and in the rhyming they become a single continuous thing, the breathing of the world, which is also the breathing of your body, which is also the slow metronome that carries you deeper and deeper into the warmth below waking. The world is old, the night is long, you are held. Sleep now. If you like this video, let me know where in the world you're watching from and what time it is. I'm always curious about that. And if you have a suggested topic, feel free to leave it in the comments.